salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala ahlihi wa sahbihi man wala. You guys, welcome to the second session of Foundations of Sharia. Our TA, Brother Faraz, he is out of town, and therefore he couldn't be here with us today. But normally he's the one who conducts the review session. So I will be conducting the review session instead. And get ready, y'all. Here it comes. So we're going to do one question per team. And those of you who have been part of the Core Academy experience before, you kind of know how it works. But for those of you, this is the first time you're seeing a review session in action. Basically, I'm going to go team by team, one question per team, and these questions are somewhat broad, so it almost requires multiple answers. So I'm hoping that 2, 3, maybe 4 individuals per team can kind of coordinate, cooperate, and try to answer as many questions as possible. Most you stand to earn is 2 points per question. So with this in mind, inshallah, we'll begin. Team Abu Bakr, are you ready? Bismillah. Here's the first question. What are some extreme behaviors that result when fiqh is not properly understood? So, now this is a little bit of an elastic question, but we gave multiple examples last time, and you can drop whatever example, analogy, whatever points that come to your mind. But what are some extreme behaviors that occur when someone is not properly grounded in fiqh? Let's begin. Your name, and then inshallah.
My name is Hussein Hamad.
All right.
So one of the things that can occur is if you don't, want to follow fiqh, or you have like a very heterodox understanding of it, you can end up creating excuses, for yourself in the sense of like, oh, it says over here that in this specific passage that it is allowed to do X,
So you can start like cherry picking. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yes.
And you let your desires kind of get in the way to figure out what the actual thing is. Okay, fantastic. And this should remind us of a particular story that we covered last time as part of your guidebook. Which story is that closest in reference to? You guys remember? 5, 4, 3,
The name.
2.
It was the story about the soldier in the court, and then Ibn Abbas was called up because the man.
Excellent.
Yeah. Do you want me to finish it or?
Finish it.
Sure. So then there was the Ibn Abbas was called, and he basically stated, you claim you're from all these battles, and you fought alongside the Prophet Muhammad, but you should know this ruling was created in order to, as like a
Excuse.
as an excuse, as a way to forgive those who did not know.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. You guys remember a great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, despite having fought in Badr and Uhud, he still, because of his perhaps long-standing practice of drinking, he was able to unfortunately just settle for a very superficial understanding of the issue by latching on to one particular ayah as opposed to understanding the whole picture, the whole paragraph. So that was one example. So you guys, one thing we're hearing, and inshallah we're going to be able to give like a full point to Brother Hussein right here. So one thing that's clear is that if you're not properly understanding fiqh, you're going to let your desires dictate your cherry picking. That's a dangerous situation to be in. I'm looking for another answer from Team Abu Bakr so you get your full scope of points before we move on to the next question. Do I have anything else? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Opening it up to the entire. Oh, okay, we got something. Brother Atif, go ahead.
I think you're talking about if you do not have the proper knowledge of it and then you do the cherry picking of the information.
Yes.
So
that point's taken. So there's another point of an extreme behavior that results when someone hasn't done their homework in fiqh. All right, you got something for me, brother? Go ahead.
It can result in the murder of someone.
It can result in the murder of someone. Well, those are extreme cases, but generally, hopefully, most of us won't end up killing somebody because of fiqh. But perhaps you can say it's an example of a type of an attitude. I'm looking really for the attitude because the attitude affects a great variety of individuals. Okay, opening it up to the entire class. So the sister hand was up first. Okay, Amber, chalo, bismillah.
So that hadith by Imam Hassan al-Basri, where it says actions without much knowledge does more harm than good, and then they talk about the group of Khawarij that ended up unleashing their swords on the Ummah.
Very good. Okay, so you're almost there. What kind of an attitude that is? So that one attitude is that you let your desires dictate your understanding of fiqh. The other extreme behavior then is just deliver it home. Yes. So we're coming back to the brothers. Rafi, go ahead. Arrogance. Okay, Mustafa. What kind of extremism that is? Because letting your desires dictate is a type of extremism. What kind of? This is the Too literate, very good. You're too narrow-minded in your understanding of fiqh. You either become too liberal in your understanding of fiqh, where you let your desires kind of just determine and drive your car as to what is halal and haram, or you become so literate, so fixated on the letter of the law that you lose the spirit of the law. Got it? Okay, very good. So Mustafa will, I think we'll give half a point there to Mustafa. Barakallahu feek. We move on to the next question, and this is for Team Umar. Team Umar. Javed the Jahil was at Eid prayer when an imam decided to lead. Okay, this is a real life situation, by the way. It occurred to me. So here we go. Ready? Okay, I shouldn't call the person Jahil then. So let me. So let's see here. Anyway, Javed was at Eid prayer when an imam decided to lead their Eid prayer with 3 takbirat before the recitation and 3 after. Imam said in an explanation before he started their Eid prayer that this is how Abdullah ibn Mas'ud would pray. Javed, on the other hand, said, what kind of bid'ah is this? All my life, I have never seen anything like this. From where I come from is always 7 rak'ahs first, and 7 takbirat first, 5 takbirat later. What is this 3 business? After his tantrum was over, Javed decided to repeat his Eid prayer. All right. So the question, I guess, is how do you, if you were dealing with Javed, remember one of those contemporary confusion scenarios that we had? So you're in that situation and you're talking to Javed, what would you say? Like, how would you calm his nerves and try to knock some sense into him and maybe perhaps keep him from repeating his prayer and calling the imam, mubtadir and ahlul bid'ah? You know what I'm saying? Okay, chalo, Team Omar, let's see what you got. Amir, go ahead, get us started, brother.
I mean, I'll first of all give the example of the time of the Sahabas, like in the time of Prophet, where some Sahabas followed the letter of the law and some followed the spirit of the law, where he said don't pray maghrib until you reach the destination.
So how does that help here though?
So
because there the Prophet was there.
Yeah. But it goes to show that Deen is it is flexible and it's meant to be easy, and it's not not everything has one solution or one.
Well, what if he comes back to you and says, okay, I'll just do 10 takbirat now. 10 takbirat before recitation, 10 after. So it's very flexible, clearly.
That then he's competing with the existing schools of thoughts, because if there's already
What existing?
the 4 schools of thought.
Uh-huh.
And when there's already existing credible scholars who give them
Okay, you're getting close now, so we can give half a point for this. Anybody else in Team Umar? Hamza, go ahead.
So he's not going to the people of knowledge in order to find out the answer to what these questions is. He's not, he knows the imam and the sheikh is the person that is knowledgeable on the subject, yet he still has an ego to compete that, what I'm doing is right, even though I haven't researched it at all.
Very good. So his assumption is, this person makes a critical assumption. Did you guys notice what the assumption was? His assumption is, because his whole beef with the imam is that all my life I've prayed and I've never seen anything like this. Therefore, the assumption is, go ahead, anybody else in Team Umar? What's the assumption? Just because he's narrow-minded, just because I haven't seen anything like it, it can never be a possibility. It's like, if I haven't seen any aliens, there can never be any aliens. That type of mentality. And that's why there's always a rule. They say, lack of evidence is not evidence for absence, or absence of evidence is not evidence for absence, right? Did I get that right? Okay, very good. So this is the situation of this person's mentality, because he is not diverse in his experience of different schools of thought. He is imposing that as the final verdict on the event, and that's a dangerous thing because he's a layman. And now he's putting the imam on trial based on his, few pixels of knowledge. So that's another thing I would say. Anything else you guys would drop based on the contemporary confusion debates that we had last time? So far we have anybody else? You guys remember, you're frozen now, Amir. Might I remind you? Yeah, keep scratching your beard until you're... Anybody else? Yes, opening up to the class. Go ahead, Brother Dean.
So the 3 at the takbirat is for, and you have to pray 3 first, second, and then 3 after the recitation, and then that's all this, right? The 7 and 5 is their sahih based on that.
Okay, but how does this help this person?
That both of them are mutawatir, and the sahaba, both of them are.
Which sahabi? And this is why I gave you a very specific piece of information in the scenario that I was setting up. What did the Imam explain to the congregation? This is how Abdullah ibn Mas'ud prayed. So you could really say to that person, so if Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was leading the prayer right now, would you not pray behind him? What kind of what kind of audacity would you have to say, no, sorry, I know better, you know? So those are some things that we can give. We can give half a point to Deen, inshallah. Barakallahu feek. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, we're moving forward, inshallah, to the next question. Team Uthman, ready? Ibn Mas'ud said, Ummah will be fine so long as knowledge comes from the seniors. Who are the seniors, number one? And how does that seniority work today? Get ready? Bismillah, go ahead. All right, Mukhtar, chalo. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
The seniors are the people that did their homework, the people that follow the Sunnah and the Quran. And currently in this day and age, how we recognize who the seniors are,
Uh-huh.
other scholars advocating for them, saying that they are confirming that they are actually knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. Like for your example, Sheikh Yasser Fadi was at your graduation.
Umar Sulaiman, but sure.
Sorry. Other sheikhs can, other scholars that are older and have been in the scene for much longer can come and advocate for you, say, okay.
Very good. So peer review is one way we know that someone has the credentials to teach. Okay, is that the only way though? There's another way we know how seniority works today. By the way, but we need to correct his answer. What is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud referring to when he says seniors? As long as knowledge is coming from the seniors. What did he mean? Team Uthman, you got to get that right. Yes. We have a hand in the corner. Brother Nan, you go first. I saw your hand first.
Basically, it's a chain that goes back to the Sahaba.
Chain that goes back to the Sahaba. So he, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, must be referring to the companions. Very good. And now, what's another way we figure out how someone is qualified today to teach fiqh or any Islamic knowledge? Diya, go ahead.
So one was reference to their peers. Another one is reference to their teachers.
Very good. Reference to teachers, but elaborate on the teacher part real quick.
So like the ijaza that they get from their teachers.
Excellent.
And if their teachers would, what the word is, like
Authorize?
authorize on their behalf, like if someone were to say, should I learn from this person? If their teacher were to say,
Yes.
learn from this person, you learn from me.
Yes.
And I learn from him.
Excellent, excellent. When we graduated from Qalam, we got a ijaza that goes all the way back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And right before my name will be Sheikh Abdul Nasir's name or Mufti Kamani's name. And that's how you kind of become part of the chain of licenses that go back all the way to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's something you need to inquire about before you just start studying with somebody. That was the whole point that I was trying to drive home. Okay, with this in mind, we move on to the fourth question. Okay, folks, here we go. Team Ali, what are the three aspects of Sharia? And how did the scholars deduce those three aspects? I'm being somewhat vague in my wording, but hopefully, inshallah, it's enough to trigger something in your mind. What are the three aspects of Sharia? And then how did the scholars bring them about or deduce them? All right, Ahmed, chalo, bismillah.
The three aspects are actions, spirituality, and beliefs.
Very good. Actions, spirituality, and beliefs. Okay, very good. What are the three fancy words for them? Actions, the actual technical word for actions is? 5, 4. Yes, Mustafa, go ahead. Islam, very good. How do we know that, Mustafa?
Because it's the physical.
And how do we know that? So in hadith, what was the indicator the Prophet gave us that tells us that Islam is referring to the physical action side of Islam or action side of Sharia? Because the Prophet was asked, what is Islam? And what did he give us? The 5 pillars, yes? And all the 5 pillars have one thing in common, and that is they're all actions. They're all physical things that require your body. So we know Islam refers to the physical submission side of Sharia. Very good. What was the other one? Beliefs. Beliefs, what's the fancy word for beliefs? Iman, very good. And we know Iman is referring to mental stuff because the Prophet gave us 6 beliefs. And that's your mental submission. And then finally, the third was Ihsan. And Ihsan was the spirituality of it. Very good. You guys, so anytime someone asks you what are the 3 aspects of Sharia, you would basically lay out those 3 things. Is everything okay over there? Is there someone in the hallway? I saw a bunch of eyes shifting in that direction, so I just wanted to. Okay. Oh, it's a point system. Okay, never mind. Okay, never mind. Okay. MashaAllah, that's good to know. All right, so Mustafa, we will give you a full point, and then Ahmed, you get a half a point, inshallah. With this in mind, sisters, we turn to you. Team Khadija, here we go. Okay, so here we go. What is the subject matter of fiqh, and what is not the subject matter of fiqh? So when we say fiqh, what does it include and what does it exclude? 5, 4, 3. Nadia, go ahead.
All right, so when we study fiqh, we're not studying beliefs, we are studying actions.
Very good. We're not studying beliefs, we're studying actions. Very good. And keep going. Anything else? Yasmin, go ahead.
So the actions are like based on like what's halal and what's haram and like now how it's being divided.
So it's the actual study of halal and haram on top of that, so we can add a little more texture there as well. And halal and haram are actually representing, these two words actually represent, so these two labels of halal and haram, they actually are representing a more detailed version of labels, which are, you guys know what I'm talking about? Wajib, mustahab, and the whole shebang. For short, we say halal and haram, but we know halal and haram are actually representing 5 different labels, which basically is the entire the next chapter about. So inshallah, we'll get to that. Inshallah, barakallahu feek. Please distribute the points between. I think you can distribute that between the two, inshallah. And then this is my last question. It's a little bit difficult, but team Fatima, you're more than capable of answering it, inshallah. Otherwise, the rest of the class will happily jump in. Here we go. Help us understand the relationship between fiqh and usulul fiqh. I'm specifically looking for 2-3 analogies, if possible. What's the relationship between fiqh and usulul fiqh? Help us out with 1 or 2 analogies if you can. Sister Noura, get us started. Bismillah.
So is like the actual study of the actions and like the labels that we give them.
Yes.
Usulul fiqh is more like the framework that we apply to the Quran and Sunnah to determine what Allah wants us to do.
How are they related?
Kind of like the lenses that we use to see through the Quran and Sunnah of people.
Okay, you are almost there, but I need, there was a little bit of a link that's missing. So you said fiqh is the study of the labels, you know, makrooh, wajib, mustahab. But then you said usul al-fiqh is the framework. But what's the connection between the two? You know what I'm saying? Lana, take it home real quick.
So usul al-fiqh is the process, whereas the fiqh.
Process for what?
Process for the fiqh, which is the end result.
Very good. So it's a process to
get to the end result.
And the end result is?
The labels for
Very good, very good. You guys understand, right? It's the process that gets you to the 5 labels and what label a particular human behavior needs. Okay, but we still need the analogies. So go ahead, you guys. Any analogies? Safiya, go ahead. Yes. Very good. And what's going into the machine? Different evidences. I would say that evidence from Quran and Sunnah, context, situational factors, verdicts of the companions. You feed all that stuff in, and then out come the labels. Now, of course, no such machinery exists. It's all in the human mind, obviously. Just putting that out there. And any other analogies, folks? I think those are all the analogies I gave. Did I give any other analogies? Okay. Opening up to the class. Does somebody have their own analogy? Because, you all gotta, imagine you had to teach this, and you had to come up with your own analogy. What would you say? Mustafa, you have a better analogy for us?
I have one if you like.
Actually, you're in frozen mode. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I led you. It's a bunch of the sisters have. Okay, yeah, we're not doing gender by gender. You're right, Mustafa. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say if you know math, like you could say it's a function that helps you come to the answer.
Okay.
The tool is a function that takes in parameters, which is like the evidences, and the output is the.
That's very nice. That's a half a point right there. Anybody else? Amr, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like software systems like iOS versus like like Android or like based off like it's doing it's providing the same utility.
What's the outcome? iOS is, let's just say iOS is the machinery, yeah? What's the outcome?
You're still like interacting with like
But what's the outcome? Okay, you gotta, because usul al-fiqh produces something as a tangible end result, an end product, right? What would a software produce as the end result? You see, so that's where, say it again? Yeah. So that's where the analogy gets a little fuzzy, in my opinion. But Hussein, did you have something?
I thought maybe you could argue that it's a science in the sense it's a methodology that you use.
Okay, but that's not an analogy. But that's a different way of different verbiage you can put on it. I need a tangible analogy, just so it's easier on the mind to kind of wrap their head around. Sister Mehvish, go ahead.
I don't know if it's like you're looking for an example of using the process.
Not an example, but like analogy from a different domain of human experience, if you will, and that is parallel to the concept that I'm trying to draw home. Yes, Noura. That's an interesting. Okay. Okay, there's a lot of hands. Okay, so obviously we won't be able to start the class if we start taking all of your amazing analogies, mashallah. But I think overall, people get the point of exactly what usul al-fiqh is. And inshallah, we're going to go a little bit deeper into this today. All right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. You guys, there's a big brown page. If you can just go to that page for a second. And on the margins, if you want to write certain things I'm going to say right now as an introduction. Again, nothing is required for you to write down. That's all on the next page. But if certain things stick with you, then inshallah, you can go ahead and write them down. You guys, today's session is where we start studying usul al-fiqh, which is basically the foundations of Islamic law. And if you scroll down just a little bit, that's basically how, this is called part 1. So this guidebook is divided in 2 parts. Part 1, we study usul al-fiqh. Part 2, we study the actual fiqh itself. So right now what we're studying is not just Islamic law, we're actually studying how to extract Islamic law from Quran and Sunnah, which is honestly a thing of beauty, and it's really sad that 80%, 90% of the Muslims never get exposed to this. In fact, see if you can get this down in your notes. Our scholars say, if you're not familiar with usul al-fiqh, the foundations, then Islamic law will always be a random collage of labels to you. Sure, you'll know certain things are makrooh and mustahab, but you won't know the thought process. You won't know the behind the scenes. You don't know what's under the hood. Sure, you may know through your common cultural knowledge gelatin is haram, and playing the slot machine is messed up or whatever. But why? What's the thought process? That will always be your blind spot. And you'll always be a sheep at the mercy of somebody who can break it down for you. Usul al-fiqh helps you understand the philosophy, the behind the scenes of how fiqh works and how Islamic law works. So let me throw a real life scenario at y'all. I need you guys to raise your hands whether you think this is permissible or not permissible. Ready? I got this on a DM. These are the type of DMs I get. Somebody's like, Brother Ameer, we're starting a fantasy football league. And 10 dudes are putting $20 each. That's a total of how much, folks? MashaAllah, math program is doing great. Yeah, it's $200, right? Okay. So they're like, we're all putting in 20 bucks each for a total pool of $200. Whoever wins the fantasy league, they will get ultimately at the end $200. Is that cool? Is this a problem? Raise your hand if this is permissible. Dang. Okay, raise your hand if it's not permissible. Okay. And raise your hand if it's mubah. Okay. So mubah meaning permissible, just so you know. So Sister Salana is saying that it's permissible. The rest of you, okay, so but half of you didn't even raise your hand. So how many of you don't know? So let's just hear. Okay, so a couple of you don't know. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Raise your hand one more time who say it's not permissible. Okay. MashaAllah. Okay, fantastic. Now, if you were in a position to articulate to this person, so this person, when they DM me, they're like, we're having a bitter debate on our WhatsApp group. We're trying to figure out where this is and how this is and all that stuff, right? And I try to explain to that person, in Islam, if you study usul al-fiqh, then you understand the rationale. And the rationale goes like this. In Islam, why is gambling problematic? Because Islam does not like one-sided transactions. What's a one-sided transaction? In a normal sales transaction, I give up $1,000, and the other party gives up their phone, the iPhone. So, in a normal sales transaction, I give up something of value, and I'm guaranteed something back in return of value. Yes, that's how a normal sales transaction works. Problem in gambling is you give up something of value, in this case 20 bucks, but you're not guaranteed a commodity in return. You're guaranteed a chance to win a commodity in return. That's a one-sided transaction because on one side of the equation there's uncertainty. So you definitively give up something, but you're not getting something back in return. It's just, there's just a chance. That's what gambling is. There's gharar in that transaction, uncertainty in that transaction. So that's where Islam steps in and says, we're not going to roll with that. And that's exactly the situation in this fantasy football example. But you see, you can't articulate that unless you understand usul al-fiqh. Does that make sense, folks? So, with this in mind, let me give you another analogy real quick. Our scholars, they call it the pharmacist versus the doctor analogy. It's beautiful. You guys, okay, so hopefully most of you already understand by me putting the analogy out there. You guys know how pharmacists, again, I'm not trying to stereotype, I'm not a pharmacist, but my understanding of a pharmacist is that they know a lot about the chemical compounds or the chemical properties of a particular drug or medicinal properties of a particular thing and the storage point and so on and so forth. But they're not allowed to do what? They're not allowed to prescribe for an actual cure of a disease. For that, you need extra training. You need to be a doctor. In Islamic fiqh, it works exactly the same way. You may have someone who's a muhaddith. They can tell you a lot about if this hadith is sahih or da'if, sound or authentic or inauthentic. Or you may have a qari of the Quran, mashallah, whose pronunciation is like Qari Abdul Basit level. He can rip open your mouth and tell you exactly where the corner of the tongue should be to pronounce dad, And they can tell you what qira'ah is which. But can they use that Quran and Sunnah to solve real life issues of people? And give the fatwa of halal and haram? That requires understanding of usul al-fiqh and so on and so forth. There's a little story. I'm a sucker for stories. I think it makes learning fun. So allow me to share with you a story of one of the greatest scholars of hadith. His name is Yahya ibn Ma'in. You can reference this in your notes as Yahya ibn Ma'in got stumped. So, long story short, Yahya ibn Ma'in was in the masjid. He's a great scholar of hadith. He's like the rating agency of hadith. You know how you have Moody's credit agency that grades certain bonds? Yahya ibn Ma'in would grade transmitters of hadith, and we rely upon his grading till today to determine whose transmission is reliable and who's not. Anywho, he's in the masjid and a lady walks up to him and she's like, I have a little bit of an issue. I'm in a tough spot in life. My husband just passed away and there's no one to wash his body, and I am on my period and there's no one else to wash his body. Can I just go ahead and do it? Yahya ibn Ma'in got stumped. He doesn't know what to answer. So, luckily for both of them, there was a great Shafi'i scholar in the vicinity, Abu Thawr. Yahya ibn Ma'in says, just go ask him, And now she goes up to Abu Thawr and he's like, I'm on my period. I want to wash the body of my husband. Is that permissible to do or not? Because, a lady in her menses, they can't pray and, their own shower doesn't count to give them purity. So she's thinking, would that count for my husband? That's the whole conundrum in her head. So she asked Abu Thawr, would that work? Abu Thawr is like, go ahead and wash his body, no problem. Now, how did he come up with the answer to that question? You see, once again, Quran and Sunnah won't spell every scenario out. Where did he get the answer from? He got it from an indirect evidence that he was able to apply. Yahya ibn Ma'in knows the same hadith, but he wasn't able to take that hadith and figure out the solution. Abu Thawr was. You know what the hadith is? Hadith comes in Bukhari, that when the Prophet ﷺ would be doing i'tikaf, what he would do, because his home was connected to the masjid, and there was just a curtain between the masjid and the room of the Prophet, so sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would go to the curtain and lean back. And his head would go inside the curtain, and Aisha radiallahu anha, who would be on her period, she would wash his head, comb it real quick, and then the Prophet ﷺ would resume his worship. Abu Thawr does the following reasoning. He does qiyas, analogical reasoning, which we'll learn later. He says, if a lady on her menses can wash the body of the living, then it would be even more allowed to wash the body of the dead, because the living can take care of their needs, a dead person cannot. See the reasoning there? And therefore he gave the fatwa that is permissible. You see, so it's one thing to know evidences, it's another to evaluate it, put it in a framework, analyze it, and then figure out solutions to real life problems that people face. And that's the beauty of usul al-fiqh that you and I are inshallah going to learn. So folks, you and I are going to inshallah look at this sophisticated machinery that has been developed and refined for literally at least over 1,000 years. And thousands of scholars have contributed to it. And we're going to study it, its source code, its setting, if you will, its key controls, the outcomes it produces, and then thereby inshallah we're going to elevate our own appreciation of Islamic law. By the way, quick question. When I say Islamic law, this is for Team Abu Bakr. When I say Islamic law, what's the fancy Arabic word for it? 5, 4, 3. Huh? Well, Sharia, well, it's flipped right now, but Sharia covers actions, beliefs. Madhab, no. Islamic law, what's the quick Arabic word for it? Yes? Okay, so that's you're getting close, but it's a word that we have already studied. Okay, opening it up to the next team. Team Romar, what's the fancy word for Islamic law? Easy word that we have already covered. 5, 4. Sometimes the simplest questions are the hardest. Fiqh, who said that? Amir Saab, very good. That's a full point for you. Congratulations. Fiqh is Islamic law, basically. Right? It's the study of halal and haram. What's halal, what's haram, that's basically Islamic law. The reason I wanted to make that a point, if I say Islamic law, I'm referring to fiqh, folks. So just for the ease of communication, sometimes I'll use English words so that no one's lost. Sometimes terminology takes a while to seep in, and then if I use too many Arabic words, people are like, people get confused. So with this in mind, let us begin. Where's my sister Nadia? Go ahead.
Chapter 1, Ahkam.
Okay, I like to, on the top, there's a little bit of space on the top before you get to the bottom. Just quickly go ahead and write this down for me, the quick recap of this chapter. You guys, this chapter helps you answer one particular question. Go ahead and write this question down. This chapter is all about answering one particular question, and that is, what is the outcome that usulul fiqh produces? What is the outcome that usulul fiqh produces? This entire apparatus, this fancy apparatus of usulul fiqh, what is it set up to give you at the end? Team Umar, what would you say? Is it set up to give you? Actually, Team Umar already answered. Team Uthman, what is it set up to give you? Yes.
The Ahkam.
Which are?
Which are the halal or mubah.
Just to say the 5 labels, right? The 5 labels, very good. It's designed to give you the 5 labels at the end. I know I'm saying something that we've already covered, but I need it to gel in, and inshallah, that's why I'm asking the simple questions here, but needs to make sure, you guys need to understand, usul al-fiqh is entirely designed at the end to give you an end product, and that is the 5 types of ahkam that you and I are going to study, and those are the 5 labels. So, study of ahkam is basically fiqh. How do you extract ahkam is usul al-fiqh. That's basically what we're getting to. You guys, hopefully you guys are following the machinery analogy that we have been developing, where we feed the evidences from the top, the context, the situational factors, and out come the labels. And that's what this machine is designed to produce. Ultimately, the goal behind this chapter is one thing, and that is for you to be absolutely comfortable with these 5 labels, y'all. That's really what I'm after. This entire chapter is dedicated to us figuring out what these labels mean. How do we extract those from Quran and Sunnah? I hope, inshallah, I can wake you up in the middle of the night and ask you what mustahab is, and you'll be able to bust it out, you know? So that's what this entire chapter is about. You should have no confusion after today what makrooh means, and what mustahab means, and what mubah means, and how Quran and Sunnah give us that. Go ahead, Sister Nadia, Bismillah.
Islam is a complete way of life where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Hikam, the legislator, has not
Hakim, sorry.
Al-Hakim, sorry. The legislator has not left any facet of our existence except there is guidance for it. This guidance, at a broad level, concerns our beliefs and behaviors. However, when we are discussing ahkam, plural hukam, we are focusing solely on human behavior, not beliefs, and the divine guidance pertaining to it.
Very good. Keep going.
Definition of hukum.
Here we go. Go ahead and write this down. What is a hukum? Hukum is a pronouncement from God regarding human actions. A pronouncement from God regarding human actions. In other words, it's a communication from Allah regarding how you should behave in a particular matter. Simple as that. It's a communication from God regarding how you should behave in a particular matter. Now, before you get to this chart, just to kind of segue into this pronouncement will take one of 5 flavors, if you will. We're going to, inshallah, start with the red. Since, as you know, we Muslims, we love being the haram police, we're going to start, inshallah, all the way from the red. Go ahead and write down in the red box, haram, which basically in English means strictly prohibited. Ignore the arrows for now. You see the 2 arrows on the corner? We're going to come back to those 2 arrows in a bit. For now, just write down haram. In English, strictly prohibited. Moving a little bit to the left, what would you say, folks, as a class? In the Arabic word is? Makrooh. Very good. Makrooh comes from kariha yakrahu, which means to dislike something, to be allergic to something. So makrooh is discouraged, disliked. Either translation works. Go ahead and get that down. And then right in the middle is, of course, mubah, which a good translation for mubah would be something that is neutral. It's neither encouraged nor discouraged. Moving a little bit to the left, slide green, we're looking at mustahab, and that is something that is encouraged and recommended. And finally, wajib, strictly required or mandatory. Ignore the arrows for now. Well, we're going to come back to them. You guys, I want you to appreciate something before we go deep into these labels. Do you realize that every conceivable human action will fall upon this spectrum? From something as small as, so every fathomable human action will fall on this gradient somewhere. Something as small as Cheetos are halal, or Funyuns are halal, something as small as that. Although for some of you it's not a small part, it's 80% of your calories, I realize. But something as small as Cheetos to all the way something like, can I donate my organs after I die? All of that falls upon this spectrum somewhere. Quick question for you guys. And which team am I on right now? I think it's Team Uthman, right? Or actually, Team Ali, right? Team Ali, help me with this. Sometimes we as Muslims in our normal day conversations will say something along the lines of, ramen noodles are halal. Which one of the 5 labels did I just use? 5, 4, someone other than Mustafa, because I think Mustafa has answered his fair share. Yes, 3. When we say Taha, what would you say? Yeah, but which of the 5 labels am I using when I say ramen noodles are halal? You have to pick one. And halal is not an option up there. So which label am I actually using? 5. Mubah, very good. You're actually using the label mubah without actually saying it. You guys, I need you to just kind of keep that in mind. But technically speaking, if you can zoom in a little bit, Sister Noor, technically, isn't mustahab also halal? It's permissible for you to do. Isn't wajib also halal? Of course, it's permissible for you to do. So in fact, mubah all the way till wajib. Sister Nadia sent the diagram yesterday. All these 3 right here, you can put the word halal on top because they're all permissible for you to do. It's just that there are certain types of halal things that God demands that you do. Uh-oh. We'll pull it up. We'll pull it back up in a second. Now, another thing to kind of note down before we move forward. So once again, wajib, mustahab, and mubah are all technically halal. Well, what about makruh? Is makruh halal or not? According to the madhab of Sister Nadia, she put it under the halal category yesterday. So that's why I didn't comment. I was like, I like your madhab, mashallah. All the makruh things are halal. Okay, so is makruh halal or not? The answer is, let's just see, let me kind of hear from you guys. What would you say? Sir Havish, what would you say?
Isn't it makruh tahrimi, which is like almost
Okay, so you're a little bit ahead of the curve, but at a more basic level, what is makruh? Is it halal or haram? It's technically halal, but, okay, so let me see, what would you say?
There's some that are close to haram, closer to halal, like makruh kilometer, tahrim, makruh kilometer.
Yeah, so that's what she was referring to as well. So I would say for now, before we get deeper into those concepts, which we will inshallah today, makruh is a gray area. It's neither halal nor haram, it's fuzzy, it's blurry. If you guys can go ahead and get that down for a second. Makruh is a gray area where it starts to get a little fuzzy, shady, if you will. In a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he called it a gray area. Now, I didn't shade it as gray, that's my fault, okay? But understand, metaphysically speaking, philosophically speaking, that's where things start to become gray, and it's best to avoid them, obviously. And haram is, of course, when you're crossing a definitive red line. So there you go. As a shortcut, folks, fiqh is the study of halal and haram. But when I say those 2 labels, what am I actually referring to? All 5 of these. It's just very difficult to communicate and say fiqh is the study of wajib and mustahab and makruh, and by the time you're done with your sentence, everybody's asleep. So if we shorten it up a little bit, fiqh is the study of halal and haram. Usulul fiqh is the study of extracting halal and haram, but what we actually mean are these 5 labels. So alhamdulillah, with this in mind, let's move forward. Sister Nadia, go ahead. Go ahead, bismillah. You guys, let us define what fard and wajib is. Ready? I need you to write small in the first box if you can, so then you can squeeze in quite a few things. Here we go. The definition of wajib, technically speaking, is any action that the lawgiver, in this case that will be Allah. Wajib is any action that the lawgiver asks for as an obligation on binding terms. It is any action that the lawgiver asks for as an obligation on binding terms. That is the official definition of a wajib. Now, folks, this is where we want to take your understanding to a whole new level. How do Quran and Sunnah communicate to you that something is wajib and fard? I'm going to give you 4 styles that Quran and Sunnah give you. I need you to squeeze it into this box. You don't have to write down examples, but at least write down the styles. Because next time you're standing in Taraweeh and you come across these ayat, I hope, inshallah, you're going to have the reaction that Sister Noura had when she was sitting in my khutbah and some of the concepts of the class came about. That's the kind of feeling. We want to train your ear. So I'm going to give you 4 styles. Whenever you come across them, you know Allah is talking about an obligation. But the first one you guys should be able to figure out. Team Khadija, this question is for you. What do you think is the most common way God communicates an obligation? That something is wajib. That's something we've already covered. You just have to kind of connect the dots. 5, 4. What is the most common way God communicates an obligation? 3, and 2. Yeah.
Like when he's saying like an established prayer, like just commanding us.
Very good. Using the command form is the most obvious way God communicates an obligation. Remember, a command triggers an obligation, that rule that I shared with you guys? That's basically something that comes right here. In parentheses, if you want to write down maybe an example, just so it refreshes your memory. In the context of wudu, what does Allah say? فَغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Wash your faces. This reminds me when I used to teach on Zoom and I didn't have a paid version. The 40 minutes would be up at the worst possible time. It reminds you of that Starbucks, no, not Starbucks, Southwest commercial. Want to get away, if you got cut off at the wrong time. Anywho, Allah says, فَغْسِلُوا, wash your faces and your hands till your elbows. Therefore, washing your face and your elbows, or your hands all the way till your elbows, is actually a fard of wudu. Your wudu is not accepted without it. In the context of Hajj, Allah says, وَلْيَطَّوَّفُوا بِالْبَيْتِ الْعَتِيقِ, and do tawaf of the house. And therefore, tawaf is a pillar, a fard of Hajj. Allah says, أَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ, fulfill your contractual obligations. That's a wajib. Anytime you see a command, by default, it's an obligation, unless, of course, there's evidence to the contrary. So that's one way, the most obvious way Quran and Sunnah communicate a form. Another way Quran and Sunnah communicate a wajib is that Allah actually uses the word wajib or fard. Like this is in your face, spelled out, you can't miss it. So Allah will use the word fard, or the Prophet ﷺ will use the word wajib. So those actual wajaba or farada is used, and that's just like in your face, blatantly clear. What will be a good example of this when Allah is talking about inheritance? So you can put inheritance as in the parentheses as an example. Yes? That's the second way. So that's the second of the 4 ways. The second way is Allah will use the word fard, or the Prophet ﷺ, or they will use the word wajib. So in the context of inheritance, what does Allah say? فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ. After he spells out the portions, he uses the word farada. Or when the Prophet ﷺ is talking about when ghusl becomes mandatory, he says فَقَدْ وَجَبَ الْغُسْلِ. So that's another way a obligation is communicated. Yes?
What about with like fasting?
Okay, that's the third one. Here we go. A little bit ahead of the curve. Third way Allah communicates an obligation is He'll use the word amara or kataba. Amara means to command. Kitaba means to prescribe. So for fasting, what does Allah say? Kutiba alaykumus siyam. First, fasting has been prescribed upon you. So amara or kataba. Or when it comes to fair retribution, I don't know if you guys know this, but in Islam, if someone commits a homicide, do you guys know what the outcome is? What's the outcome? The family of the deceased, go ahead.
So basically you have to give blood money?
Or
the person died.
Yeah, so the family has 2 options. They can either have the state apply the death penalty, or you can accept blood money, which is equivalent of about 100 camels or something along those lines, a huge fortune of money. You can accept money, or you can have the state apply the death penalty. So those are the 2 options that are available for you. So Allah says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِصَاصُ فِي الْقَتْلَى. Qisas has been prescribed upon you. So that is something that we have to carry out.
What's the difference between these 2? Can you explain it to me?
These are just 2 ways again that Allah communicates. Now the word amara and kataba are related. Kataba means to prescribe, amara means to command. So Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Allah commands you that you return the trust to their rightful owners. So once again, if you ever come across the word amara, or in one of its forms, kataba, or you come across the command form, you know God is obliging you with something, and that has to be taken seriously. The last way that Allah communicates an obligation, very interesting, is Allah will use the language of something being owed or something being due. Something being owed or something being due. And that's normally communicated with the word ala in Arabic. So Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. and mankind owes to Allah the pilgrimage to the house. Now, I have a class discussion question that I want to ask you guys. And again, this is open to the entire class. This is where, again, you offer a reflection, you reflect and you earn. Ready for this question? You guys, someone could say, Quran and Sunnah could really make our lives easy and just spell everything out for you. And just literally God would say, X, haram, B, wajib, C, mustahab. You could just really just put it black and white right in your face. There will be no room for confusion. Yet, but the situation is that there are actually commands in the Quran that don't trigger an obligation. They actually trigger a recommendation. We covered one of those last time. Let me give you another example. You know what Allah says after Jumu'ah prayer? He says, فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ When Jumu'ah prayer is done, He gives you a command. He says, فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ And then He says, وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ Two commands. Translation: when the prayer is done, go spread out into the land and seek the bounty of Allah, which in other words that means go back to work. That's a command. You think that's an obligation upon us? Do you have to go back to work after Jumu'ah? Do you have to? Can you take off after work if you wanted to spend time with your family? The answer is yes. But Allah commands it. No scholar ever understood this to mean a wajib. Everyone understands this is mubah. As if Allah is saying, you're free to go back to work. You don't have to. But we have to do all this homework and figure out what God's actually saying. God could just spell it out for you. Why not make everything plainly obvious? Why leave any room for ambiguity at all? You know what I'm saying? Okay, I want to hear from y'all's thoughts. Let's start with Amber and then we'll come back.
I think he wants us to put effort into understanding what he's telling us. When you put effort into something, you have a sense of ownership because you put effort into understanding that. And then
That's profound. That's actually really, really profound. As if God, that's one of the 4 reasons I have. One of them is, of course, I'll help you guys write them down later, but definitely one of them is, God's put a little effort to understanding what I'm saying. Now, there are some other reasons, of course, that we're going to come to in a second. Let me hear from someone I have not yet called upon. Go ahead, Ahmed.
I think one is that if there's no room for ambiguity, it would be a very difficult religion to follow.
Why? Someone could argue it'd be an easier religion to follow because the answer key is in your face.
How would that knowledge be shared? If there's every single thing has a ruling, how would knowledge spread? It would be impossible.
It'd be easier to spread, no? It's just an easy formula. You're like, hey, A is halal, B is haram, A is halal, C is halal, B is haram. Come on, man. It's like a simple answer key that you can easily translate. What's harder to communicate when you have ambiguity, arguably speaking? Rafi, what'd you say?
I'd say, well, you said it before that you can't list every single thing to be under these 5 labels, otherwise.
Fair enough, but the things Quran and Sunnah do spell out, even then there's a level of ambiguity. You know what I'm saying?
But also it would, some of the rulings that are in the Quran or the commandments can provide a framework for other situations that are similar, so you don't have to specifically lay out.
But wouldn't it be easy to use a case study that you know exactly what God wanted there? Is it halal or is it makrooh or is it haram? Which one did God actually intend? Did He want this to be an obligation or a recommendation? Why not just give a clear label to everything? Is the point that I'm asking. Malik, what would you say, Habibi?
Because the world is kind of not black and white.
Oh, I see. Are you non-binary? Okay. But you're onto something. Keep going.
The world is not just cookie cutter. Nothing will fit between these 2 categories.
Nice. There's complexity. Excellent. Human beings are messy little creatures. We're not robots where you just need a soulless mathematical formula. They'll just solve all your problems. It needs nuance. It needs that art, that finesse, if you will. Okay, I want to hear from Brother Adnan. Go ahead, and then I'll come to this.
When the Quran was revealed, it was 1,400 years ago.
Even in, so there's basically some room for human interpretation in that. And then I think also when you go to Hajj, it's every mode of transportation. Because back then they couldn't, conceive an airplane and cars and all these things. So there's that element where, Allah SWT allows us to, with the Sunnah, interpret different legal rulings and walk back a command.
Why is that interpretation necessary?
Because it gives you leeway
Why is that necessary?
so that you can function in day-to-day life
Why would you not be able to function if that leeway didn't exist?
Because it would become too hard.
Why? Yeah, I'm peeling the layers. I promise I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah, because then it would be too difficult to function.
Yeah, it would become static, right? If Quran and Sunnah spelled everything out black and white, religion would become static and wouldn't be applicable to any other time and place. Islam started in a desert. It survived in the most tropical environments because there's built-in flexibility, just enough ambiguity for human element to step in and make religion applicable to their settings. So, okay, Sister Noura, go ahead. Let me take some sisters' hands.
Also, like the ambiguity takes into account the person's situation, like the Sahabi that got the wound on his head. The command is to make ghusl, but in his situation that was deadly, so that's why there's like that extra leeway for us, so that way it's not actually harmful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Nadia, go ahead.
So the other part I was thinking is when we were comparing to our Jewish brothers and sisters, that they don't really have a spiritual side to it because it's all just rules, and if that's what we were practicing, then it would just be like you're saying, just labels of halal, haram, and like it would just be impossible to, it would just be robotic.
Yeah. It takes the spice out of it. Can we put it that way? Oh, Sophia, go ahead. Anzilun. That's a profound point. Elaborate on that. Did you guys hear that? It's just so deep. I don't know if elaborate. Just why would say that one more time?
It gives us room for error. There's gray areas for a reason, so that like you have space. Like it's not like, oh my God, it's haram, like right away.
Yes. As if like God has built-in benefit of the doubt for your own benefit, you know? Allow me to give you 4 reasons that if you guys can quickly write them down, and inshallah we're going to move forward to the types. You guys, the reason Quran and Sunnah don't always make everything supremely obvious in the same, giving you the labels in your face. Number 1, because Quran and Sunnah will become really boring. That's the first one. Variety is the spice of life. So Allah uses variety of different styles to communicate obligations and recommendations. So you don't become bored, you don't become tuned out, or you don't become tone deaf, as they say. Number 2, scholars would be out of work. If God spelled everything out, and there's no left for human enterprise to exert their effort, then there's no need for an elite class of scholars who are dedicating time and effort to understanding God's intent. So I wouldn't have a job. Alhamdulillah. Number 3, as Sister Umber said, for the love of God, put a little effort. Allah provides a little challenge, using different styles, and now you have to kind of connect the dots. It's actually really, really fun when you discover something on your own. As you said, it gives you a sense of ownership. And it makes practicing Islam a little bit more engaging and fulfilling because you had to exert the effort to get at what God actually wanted. That's what makes religious studies a fulfilling enterprise. As you're going to see, I'm going to put up some case studies today where you're going to figure out if something is mustahab or actually wajib. Then you're going to see when your intellectual juices started to flow, it's just a fantastic experience. And finally, the last one, very, very important. Quran and Sunnah don't spell everything out because Allah intentionally, and I choose my words carefully here, Allah intentionally wants difference of opinion. Now, that sounds almost like a blasphemy, isn't it? God wants difference of opinion? The answer is yes. Now, I'm not talking about crazy difference of opinion, like Aqidah and belief difference of opinion, like Sunni and Shia difference of opinion, and Qadianis and Sunnis difference of opinion. I'm not talking about that. That's blameworthy difference of opinion. But within fiqh, yes, our scholars, they say, اختلاف الأمة رحمة. Difference of opinion is actually a form of mercy. A lot of laymen don't understand that. I used to talk to my relative, they're like, these Hanafis and Shafis, why do we have to disagree about everything? I'm like, it's actually good. Because if 2 qualified scholars are reaching 2 different conclusions, that means if one is saying it's wajib, the other says it's recommendation, we have 2 options to follow. And it makes practice of Islam a little bit easier. Can I give you an amazing example? This happened in Islamic history. The great Harun al-Rashid, the famous Khalifa of Islam. His judge, or his chief justice at that time, or the main advisors were all Hanafis, Qadi Abu Yusuf and others. In the Hanafi school of thought, we hold the opinion that Imam's prayer is intimately tied with the people praying behind him. This means if Imam doesn't have taharah, and so his prayer is invalid, guess what? Everybody else's prayer is invalid. Quran and Sunnah have built-in ambiguity, therefore, this is the conclusion Hanafis reach. But Shafi'is and Malikis, they say no, even if the Imam's prayer is invalid, everybody else's prayer is valid. What happened? Khalifa Harun al-Rashid is leading the prayer. Behind him in Baghdad are thousands of people praying. After he's done with khutbah and leading the Jummah prayer, he finds out that he doesn't have wudu. Now what are they going to do? On the Hanafi school of thought, the answer is everybody else, they need to redo their Jummah, or at the very least Dhuhr prayer. It's all cancelled, yes? But problem is people have fantashiru fil ard, right? People have spread out. Now how are you going to send an email? What are you going to do? How are you going to tell everybody, can you guys just make sure you redo your prayer, please, because Khalifa messed up? So Qadi Abu Yusuf, look at the genius here. He's like, today, because we are in a dire necessity situation, we're going to default to the opinion of our Maliki brothers and sisters. And he gave the fatwa that inshallah their prayer is valid. This, by the way, tells you you can do madhab hopping if there is a genuine hardship. Yes. Okay? Genuine hardship. You having to wake up 15 minutes early is not a genuine hardship, people. All right? Please. You having to make an extra wudu is not genuine hardship. So you're flipping between, well, we'll talk more about that inshallah. The wudu breakers, we'll talk about that inshallah. All right, everybody understood? So those are the 4 reasons why we have difference of opinion. It's so beautiful, man. I hope inshallah as you elevate in your understanding of fiqh, you appreciate difference of opinion and not be turned off by it. Don't have an allergic reaction to difference of opinion. Wallow in complexity and appreciate the human creativity that went into this to produce flexibility for you and I. Alhamdulillah, man. Okay, wow. Anything else? Diya, let me hear from you real quick.
You say, like, just to add on to the 4 reasons, I find it, if you, back to number 3, if you put in effort, if you know why this is halal or haram, you find it a lot easier to follow that rule.
100%.
Instead of just, like your parents tell you, don't do this.
It gives you itminan, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. Very good. That's a very good reflection. Half of it. You guys, let me quickly move forward and then I'll take some other hands. Go ahead, Sister Nadia. Hustle us a little bit.
Types.
You guys, wajibs, there are different types. Most of them are common sense. Most of you already know this, but I'm just going to give it a category name. First type of wajib you want to be aware of, I'm going to give you 3 types, by the way. The first type is time-sensitive wajibs versus non-time sensitive. Time-sensitive wajibs versus non-time sensitive. I believe this is Team Fatima's turn, right? Is that correct? Team Fatima, give me 4 wajibs that you know that are time sensitive. Ready? 5, 4. Yes, go ahead. Prayer and fasting in Ramadan, they have to be done within a very specified window. So those are 2 that are taken care of. That's a half point for her. I need 2 more, folks. Safiya, go ahead. Zakah, you have to pay. Zakah, you have to pay within the year. Is that true? Technically, you can pay zakah when. Zakah is actually a non-time sensitive. I think what you're referring to is when does it become an obligation? It becomes an obligation after a year has passed. But to give zakah, you have an indefinite window. So that's actually an example of non-time sensitive. But fair enough. Sister Shazza, yes. Women's return to birth after giving prayer. Yeah. So now tell us the time limit.
I think it's 1 month. I'm not 100%.
It's 40 days. 40 days, yes, very good, excellent. Malikis, they say 60 days. Okay, that's cool. I think I need 1 more from you guys, and that is, Lana, go ahead. Hajj, very good. Hajj, you can't just do Hajj right now, right? Sorry, it has to be in Dhul Hijjah, and within 8 to 13 day window, inshallah. Okay, you guys, with this in mind, I want to give you maybe 2-3 examples of non-time sensitive obligations, just so you have them for your record. One was already given to you, paying zakah. Now, zakah should be paid right away, but there's no strict window of time. Can someone from Team Abu Bakr tell me 2 other forms of wajibs that there's no time limit on it? You can do it whenever you want. Sooner the better, sooner than later, but there's no expiration on it. This is Team Abu Bakr's opportunity. 5, 4, 3, 2, and yes. This one's a little tricky. Huh?
Yeah, going to Hajj, doing your...
But there's a window of time you have to do Hajj in. But you're right, I guess you can choose any year, but still there's a time constraint on it. But I'm talking about an obligation that has no time constraint whatsoever. Ready? 3, 2, 1. All right, Team Umar. Do we have something? 3, 2. I can't see him. I'm sorry. Amir, go ahead, buddy. Habibi.
Okay, this was actually a question, but I'm just gonna.
Yeah, you have to answer for it.
So, Zakat al-Fitr, is that?
That is a Zakat al-Fitr is a time sensitive because after Eid it no longer counts, as Shaykh Ziyad will so vigorously tell you. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask, but yeah.
Okay. Yes. Comment. Wudu. Wait, is wudu an obligation? It is. So it's tied to the obligation of prayer, and prayer is a timed obligation. So it's not a standalone obligation, is basically what I'm saying. I need a standalone obligation that is, okay, opening it up to the entire class. Yes, go ahead. Umrah. Umrah is a very good example. According to Shafi'is and the Hanbalis, Umrah is a fard, is a requirement. For Hanafis, Umrah is a sunnah mu'akkada. Just so you know, we'll talk about that inshallah a little bit later. But that's a great example. That's a half a point. I need one last example. Dia, go ahead. But that's when it's triggered, I guess. But you're right. I guess that once it's triggered, it's there's no time limit on it. It should be done as soon as possible. Fair enough. Maybe we can give you a half a point for that. But you guys, making up your prayers and making up your fast, technically there's no expiration on it. Yes. Nadia. Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, moving on to the second category of wajibat. You guys, so the first one was time sensitive versus non-time sensitive. Here's the second one. Amount sensitive versus non-amount sensitive. Sometimes to fulfill an obligation that Allah asks you, you need to respect the amount and the quantity. Muhaddad versus ghair muhaddad. So, Team Umar, please help me out. Give me 3 wajibat that are amount sensitive. Go ahead. Prayer. How so?
Because you have a certain amount of rak'ah.
Excellent, very good. That's a half a point. What else? Give me another one. Where you need to respect the amount. Come on, this should be pretty easy. So prayer is one. What else is, yes? Zakat, how so? 2.5%. Very good. Amount is laid out for you. Is there anything else? Yeah, okay, go ahead. Fasting. There's, but that's a, okay, elaborate on the fasting. I'll correct your thinking. But that's a time issue, not a quantity issue. Yes? Okay, very good. Anything else?
What about making up your fast? If you intentionally miss a fast, you have to make up a certain amount of days.
But that's tied to your time, you know? But there's nothing specific that you have to do within fast that's based on a certain quantity. A better example would be, for instance, the blood money. Blood money is a very specific amount, like 100 camels equivalent that I gave you earlier. Employee compensations. If you contractually agreed upon a contract amount, you need to honor that contract amount. Zakat al-Fitr would be another great example. You have to give a specific amount. They usually tell you it's $10, right? Okay, there you go. Non-amount sensitive obligation. Those are very hard to think of when it comes to examples. There's only one example or two that I was able to think of. Anybody want to take a guess? What's a non-amount sensitive obligation? And that is, go ahead.
I don't have like a specific one, but would it be like more pertaining to like your obligations in the household, like
You're getting very close, Habibi. Very close. Say it again.
As like a husband or a wife, like what you'd have to do?
Okay, you're getting close. Very good. It's like there's one particular obligation. Actually, this is Team Uthman's term, right? You said mahar. Did I hear mahar? But you specify that in a contract, so you have to go off of your contract amount. Sorry, unless you're rich as Amir, clearly there's no upward limit. Now we know, mashallah. Yes. But that's specified. You need to, and that's as we're going to learn, it's a little bit of a technical thing. Presence of 2 witnesses is a shart. It's a precondition. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a difference there. But I think, remind me of your name again? Yusuf. Yusuf came the closest. Spending money on your wife. You know, if you're obliged to support your wife financially and your kids. There's no specified amount as to how much you should spend. You know, I recently gave a khutbah on on domestic violence and whatever, you know. And I was talking about how the standard that Islam sets. A man asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, what are the rights women have upon us? And he essentially said, you treat them the way you treat each other, the way you treat yourself. So the standard of living, food, shelter, whatever, it needs to be the same. So one of the doctor texts me, he's like, so the standard has to be the same, right? He's like, I have 3 shirts, my wife has 300. So where does this fall in? I was like, standard of living being the same, that's the baseline, brother. Everything above is mustahabs, mustahab territory. But anyways, that was an interesting conversation we had. Yes, Abid, go ahead. But sadaqah is not an obligation, is it? You see the difference there? That would be an example of the next category of mustahab. Did you guys hear what he said? Giving charity is an open-ended thing, but it's not an obligation, is it? Sister Mahvish, go ahead. You're getting to the third category. You're a little bit ahead, but that's a very good example. I guess we can give half a point for that. You guys have more examples. So Fatima, go ahead.
I was thinking about, like, since we're talking about husband and wife, like taking care of parents when they're old, does that form any?
It does. Taking care of your parents, kindness to parents, is not something we can quantify, I guess. So that's something that we can count as an example, inshallah, as well. Okay, last one, go ahead. Yes, you.
Is it put on? Like put on, there's no certain amount that you have to.
But is that an obligation? It's not an obligation. So specifically obligations, that's what we're trying to figure out. So with this in mind, let me give you the third category of obligations. This is, you guys, if you forgot everything I said about the categories of obligations, this you need to remember. If someone asks you, if you tell someone you studied fiqh and they ask you what is fardul kifaya and you don't know, you look like an amateur. So please get this down. Another category of obligations is what we call individual obligations versus collective obligation. The fancy words for an individual obligation is fardul ayn. And a communal or collective obligation is called a fardul kifaya. Now, what's an individual obligation? This is an obligation that every single person is obliged to do. Most of the times when we talk about fard and wajib, that's what we're talking about, like your prayers, like your zakah, like your hajj. These are individual obligations. Respecting your parents, fulfilling your promises and oaths, these are individual obligations. It matters that every single person does it. But when it comes to communal obligations, it's not the actor that's the focus, it's the act itself. As long as even a few people take care of the business, everybody else is off the hook. Okay, so, which team's turn is this? Team Umar, is this for you? Give me an example of a communal obligation. Janazah doesn't count. Because everybody knows the janazah. Yes, janazah is communal obligation. That's what you were getting at. Even if few people take care of it, everybody else is off the hook. Did you say Jumu'ah? So in other words, if this row attended Jumu'ah, that everybody else is off the hook.
I meant, like, that when the imam prays, like, from the Hanafi perspective, as we were discussing, isn't that, like, if it's bad, like, if he does it right, it counts for everyone who prayed behind him, and if he, like, messes up.
But it's still, praying is an individual obligation, right? Praying Jumu'ah is an individual obligation. You're not off the hook because the imam did it, you know? Okay, anybody else in Team Umar? Yes? Oh, i'tikaf, is that so first of all, i'tikaf is not an obligation, so that's the first problem with that. Aziz. Hajj, what about it? You're talking about I think what you're referring to is the arrangement of Hajj, not the individual Hajj itself.
Well, like, not everyone's required to go, but it has to be.
But it's still an individual obligation. The only reason you're not required to go is because you don't qualify for your financial perspective. But imagine 1,000 people qualified and 10 people did the Hajj. Is everybody else off the hook? They're not. So therefore, it would not count as a kifaya. Okay, bro, this is your...
What about, it's not like, it's related to janazah, but it's not specifically janazah. Stuff that like washing the bodies and stuff like that, a specific person does it, you know?
Okay, so like an institution that washes the dead bodies, you know? Okay, that maybe we can, but it's connected to janazah, so I don't know if we can give point for that. Sister Hiba, we're still struggling here with Team Umar here. Let that be noted for the record, inshallah. Okay, opening it up to the entire class, I need 2 examples and we're moving forward. Sister Shaza, go ahead.
The establishment of a masjid.
Thank you very much. Establishment of a masjid. Someone needs to do it. Some uncles need to do it. Yes. And now you can use that as a parallel study to come up with a lot of answers. Okay, let me go. Dia, go ahead. Huh? Salatul Eid, okay. So but that's again an individual obligation. Okay, so Ahmed Chatta, yes. Jihad, yes, very good. Fighting jihad, if we were living in those times, then yes, someone would have to do it. Brother Adnan?
What about praying in the mosque for the 5 daily prayers?
Yeah, so, okay, very good. So here we go. Well, that goes back to the masjid. That's the function of a masjid. But I guess what you're saying is that someone needs to be present for those Jama'ah prayers. Very good. Okay, you guys, go ahead and write these down. Janaza, building hospitals, courts, masjids, organizing congregational prayers, Amr bil Ma'roof. These are all, notice a lot of you gave very religious examples. It also applies to the secular realm because Islam doesn't have a very clean distinction between religious and secular. So building hospitals is a fard kifaya. Building courts, having courts in schools is a fard kifaya. I would argue having mental health professionals in our day and age is very increasingly a fard kifaya. Okay, folks, we good? All right, let's move forward. I hope you guys hold your hands because we're still on the second page and it's 12:20. MashaAllah. Continue, sister. Outcome. So now, let me tell you the legal outcome of individual obligations and collective obligations. You guys, when it comes to the individual obligation, obviously we already know it's mandatory within the right time, with the right amount, if applicable. It is mandatory within the right time, with the right amount, if applicable. You're rewarded for doing it, and you are sinful and liable in the eyes of Allah for not doing it. Once again, it is mandatory with the right time and the right amount. Allah rewards you for doing it, and you're sinful and liable in this world or the next for not doing it. This is something to be careful of, folks. We need to get our obligations on a lockdown. You know what Allah says? فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ. Let those who oppose Allah's messenger and His guidance, let them beware. Beware of what? أَن تُصِيبَهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ أَوْ يُصِيبَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Either a fitna will strike them or a painful punishment will strike them. Fitna in this world, painful punishment there. So if you're facing a lot of trials in life, and a lot of people ask, Brother Ameer, I can't seem to catch a break, one bad thing after another. If you're if you're trying to reduce the amount of trials in life, one of the places you need to look at, do you have your obligations on a lockdown? Starting with your 5 daily prayers, folks. Look at your obligations. So that's the individual obligations outcome. When it comes to the communal obligation, if you take care of the task, rest are off the hook. Communal obligation. If you take care of the task, rest are off the hook. Otherwise, if everyone flaked and everyone bailed, then the whole community is sinful. No small matter. Let me tell you a little story as you guys are writing this down. One of our scholars, he was traveling through the UK, and he passed by a town and they needed to pray, and there was a small town, and the map showed that there's a mosque there. So they drove up to the mosque and the door is locked. After a lot of effort, they found a local who could get them inside, and they finally prayed. Then they asked the local, what's up with this masjid being locked like this? And the local says, no one comes and prays here. Everyone's too busy to revitalize the house of Allah. You realize the entire community is sinful? They all dropped the ball. So, now let me hear it from you as a class. What's the fancy Arabic word for a communal obligation? Fard kifaya. Very good. Okay, with this in mind, Bismillah, go ahead. Everybody good so far? Do I need to slow down for anyone? You guys, I need your brain power for this next one, in this additional notes. First point is easy, the second point is a little technical. Here we go. You guys, for majority of the scholars, fard and wajib are exactly the same thing. For majority of the madhabs and the scholars, fard and wajib are synonymous. No difference at all. That's the first bullet point. Here's the second one. Hanafis, on the other hand, are a little bit more nuanced, or as I like to say, a little more sophisticated. By the way, Hanafis and Shafi'i jokes will be a little bit of a norm later. If that causes emotional damage to anyone, you can talk to me after class. Hanafis separate between fard and wajib. How? Here we go. According to the Hanafis, fard is any obligation that is established through definitive evidence. They use a fancy word there. It's called qat'i. This is one of the few Arabic words I hope you remember. You know what qata'a means in Arabic? To cut. Literally, it's like similar. Qata'a, cut. So when a knife cuts something, they say qata'a. But when something is cut and dry in your face, we say qat'i. Hanafis, they say if fard is any obligation that is established through definitive evidence. Now, what in the world is definitive evidence? Two categories. When something comes from Quran and something comes from a widely transmitted hadith. Multiple Sahaba are narrating it, multiple transmitters. It's widely circulated among scholars. Get all this down, all the verbiage that I just gave you. What's a definitive evidence? Quran, because Quran is widely transmitted. Or something very similar to Quran is a widely transmitted hadith. You have multiple companions telling the same thing. And is widely known in scholarly circles. If an obligation comes from those lanes, we're going to call it fard. So those are your 5 pillars. Laws of inheritance, or any obligation that Quran and widely transmitted hadith established, that's your fard. You know what the big deal about fard is? Here we go, this is a kicker. Anyone who denies fard is a thing is potentially no longer a Muslim. If you deny a fard, you're potentially not a Muslim. Now, unless if that person is ignorant or whatever, we may find an excuse for them, but by and large, fard is serious business. This is like, our scholars, they give an amazing analogy. They say, Islam, if you wanted to compare Islam to an apartment, faraid are the walls that you can't move. And there's some other things like the furniture that you can move. There's room for flexibility. Faraids are serious business. It's like those immovable walls. Can't mess with that. If you try to mess with that, the whole house collapses. And therefore, anyone who denies a fard, that comes from qat'i evidence, definitive, Quran, and widely transmitted hadith. You don't really have much of an excuse now, buddy. It's in your face. You got to take it. Got it? I gave you a couple examples. There are your 5 pillars, laws of inheritance, and everything else. Now, what's a wajib then? Wajib is any obligation that's established through probable evidence. Not definitive evidence, probable evidence. And the word they use for that is dhanni. So you'll see in advanced scholarly circles, qat'i versus dhanni. That's what that's basically referring to. Qat'i is clear cut. Dhanni is speculative, probable. Still good evidence. Is this not as clear cut as the qat'i? Now, the $1 million question is, what's dhanni evidence? What's probable evidence? Here we go. This is maybe a new concept for y'all, but please get this down. Anytime you have a hadith coming through solitary transmission, anytime you have a hadith coming through a solitary transmission. What's a solitary transmission? One sahabi is narrating it. Few transmitters here and there. Not widely circulated in scholarly circles. That's a solitary transmission. You guys know what an example of a wajib is? Sadaqatul fitr is a wajib, not a fard. Quran doesn't talk about it. But it comes to us from a hadith of Abu Hurairah and others. It's not a widely transmitted thing. Udhiyah is actually a wajib, not a fard. Recitation of Fatiha in prayer is a wajib, not a fard for the Hanafis. So if you skip Fatiha accidentally, I don't know how that would happen, but if it did, you can do sajdatul sahw and fix it. If you don't recite at all, recitation is a fard because Quran clearly says فَقْرَؤُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. You need to recite something. If you miss recitation altogether, your prayer is invalid, you can't even fix it. But if you recited something, just not Fatiha, then in that situation it's fixable. So, you guys, a $1 million question is, again, another $1 million question. Why downgrade a hadith because it's solitary transmission? Philosophically, use your brain real quick for me. Why downgrade a hadith because it's solitary transmission? Mustafa, quickly. Very good. The higher chance of there being a transmission error. Look at the thinking here. Because you have few transmitters there's room for error. We only have one person's words to rely upon. We're not going to cancel someone's Islam because of this inherent room for error. We'll still take it seriously. It's not like Hanafis throw away hadith, astaghfirullah. We still take it very seriously, but we distinguish, is this a wajib or is it a fard? Fard, your Islam can be cancelled because of it. Wajib, you still have to do it, but you have some face-saving excuse in the eyes of Allah on the Day of Judgment. We're coming to that today, inshallah. Inshallah, that's going to be one of the case studies. Now, you guys, do me a favor now, scroll up to page number, where the arrows were? So, go up to the arrows. Now, what I'd like you guys to do here, I want you to put the word fard right here. And in parentheses, put obligation through qat'i evidence for Ahnaf or for Hanafis. Fard is an obligation through qat'i evidence for Ahnaf. And you can put that right there. And under wajib, I need you to put a little more nuance now. Obligation through dhanni evidence for Ahnaf. There you go, perfect. And same thing's going to happen on the other side. If you can't already catch the drift, we'll get there in a second, inshallah. Okay. All right, let's come down. Bismillah. Whenever you guys are done writing, Bismillah. All right, we're going to do some spiritual gems and we're going to take a break, inshallah. Okay, go ahead.
All right, spiritual gems.
You guys, before we continue our study of Ahkam and take a break, and we go for, oh, thank you. Before we continue our study of Ahkam and these labels, I want us to get a little spiritual here. Remember, Core Academy is toggling between technical and spiritual, yes? Folks, if you want to write this on the top somewhere, we don't want to get lost in the sauce here. We get lost in labels and terminologies and kifaya and fard and wajib and all that stuff, and we lose the larger point. What's the larger point behind all these labels? One thing. It's to facilitate Allah's obedience. We're not dealing with human commands here. This needs to carry gravity into our hearts. Sometimes when you reduce things to like concepts and equations, it loses the gravity. I don't want us to lose the gravity of things. This is the creator of the heavens and the earth. تَنْزِيلًا مِمَّنْ خَلَقَ الْأَرْض وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ الْعُلَى. That's technically God talking. That's what this show is all about. Can I share with you what Sheikh Sa'id al-Kamali said? And it's giving me chills as I'm thinking about it right now. Sheikh Sa'id al-Kamali is a great scholar from Morocco. He said there was a layman, a jahil, who grew up learning his Islam by watching his parents and watching people in his culture. He noticed that people in his culture, when it would come to Dhuhr prayer, would pray 4 rakahs, and 2 rakahs, for a total of 12. When he became a little bit more scholarly and a little bit more knowledgeable, he realized, oh, the first 4 units are actually sunnah. Next 4 are actually the fard, the obligatory stuff, and the next 2 are also sunnah. So after a while, now that he knew the distinction, his Dhuhr prayer actually shrunk. Pretty occasionally, quite frequently, he would just do the fard prayer because now he knew, as a great alim, that element is an obligation. So his total worship of Allah actually went down. Sheikh Sa'id says, if that's what knowledge leads to, then ignorance is better than knowledge. And that's something that you and I have to worry about. It's something I have to worry about. Let's say you grew up knowing witr is fard or wajib or whatever, and you always did it. And now you came to this class and you're like, oh, actually, the madhabs say X, Y, and Z. I'm not giving away the answer. We'll talk about it. And next time, you're watching a game late into the night, as football games tend to do, and you're really, really tired. You're like, you know what? Brother Ameer did say it's, not exactly the green label. It's the light green label. Okay. So, allow me to kind of talk to you about obedience of Allah real quick. Go ahead, Sister Nadia. Yahya ibn Mu'adh, the great ascetic, he says something really beautiful. His name, by the way, comes up a lot in the Islamic tradition, spiritual tradition. He says, the more you obey Allah, the more His obedience becomes sweeter in your heart. The more you obey Allah, the more His obedience becomes sweeter in your heart. It's kind of like the runner's high. Initially, there's lactic acid and pain, but if you stick to it, the endorphins eventually kick in. Well, Imam Ahmad, that's exactly what happened to him. He said, I struggled to do Qiyamul Layl for an entire year. It's tough to wake up. That blanket is harder to bench than 3 plates. But because he stuck to it, Allah made it enjoyable for him for the next 40 years. Now, you guys, real talk, if you're struggling to find sweetness in your own prayers, in your own worship of Allah, listen to what Ahmad ibn Harb said. He said, I worshipped Allah for years, but I never found sweetness, except when I let go of 3 things. He says, I worshipped Allah for years. I was just kind of going through the motions, coasting along. Never felt stuff until I let go of 3 things. First thing he let go of, he said, seeking validation from people. Now, what does that have to do with religiosity? You know why? There's a profound connection here. A lot of times, our religiosity is a reflection of our surroundings. MashaAllah, all your MSA buddies are wearing hijab. Next thing you know, the hijab comes on. But your circle of friends change, and hijab comes off. This happens a lot. When sincerity kicks in, that's the starting point of your sweetness. Number 2, he says, I let go of seeking company of bad people. I let go of friends that talk about dirty things, watching nasty music videos, for whom God is a serious topic that should only come up once in a blue moon. Hereafter is not exactly a priority. You guys, I'm sure you guys can relate to this. Your friends are like 60% of the work, really. You are in the religion of your friends. I know a lot of young people have told me their breakthrough came, or their spiritual openings came in those late, deep night conversations with their MSA friends or whatever, or that long road trip. That's why Core Academy is so big on suhbah. The great Ibn Ata'illah, he says something so beautiful. He says, وَلَا تُصَاحِبْ مَنْ لَا يُنْهِضُكَ حَالُ وَلَا يَدُلُّكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ مَقَالُ. So profound. He says, don't be close friends with those whose demeanor never motivates you towards goodness, and their speech never stirs you towards Allah. He's like, as if he's saying, you need to discriminate here. This is good discrimination, folks. You know how you discriminate for your life partner? You have to, right? You also have to discriminate when it comes to your inner circle of friends, because you are on the lifestyle of your friends. And then finally, he said, I let go of chasing dunya and going ham when it comes to dunya. So he said, I became a learned minimalist. You got to pick your battles wisely when it comes to dunya. Because if you start latching onto every opportunity to start a new business, every opportunity of entertainment, every opportunity of a side hustle, your brain's way too consumed to focus on self-care and spiritual care in the hereafter. I'll tell you my own example. A while ago, just a few months ago, I really got into Robinhood and swing trading. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I'm looking at my phone 10 times a day, and my mood is changing with the stock market, I knew that was not sustainable for someone like me if I want to focus on deen and the work of the deen and producing quality courses. It's just not going to happen. You got to pick your battles wisely. Okay, the last thing before we take our break, this one hits deep, man. Go ahead. Okay, don't write anything down yet. I just want you guys to enjoy this, and then I'll tell you what to write down. I want you to put yourself in this position. Ready? There was a rabbi from Bani Israel back in the days. He was respected in his community, revered, but he was actually a fraud, and he was a hypocrite. Religious on the outside, and kind of corrupt and empty on the inside. One day, as he's sitting there, a thought occurred to him, and he's thinking out loud. And he's like, oh my Lord, referring to God. He's like, oh my Lord, how often I sin and deceive, but you don't punish. What does he say? How often I sin and deceive, but you don't punish. This question was so weighty to Allah that Allah sent down Jibreel to one of the prophets of Bani Israel who's alive to go and answer this rabbi. So Allah tells this prophet, go say to him. Now remember what the question was, right? He asked Allah, his question was, how often I sin and deceive, but you don't punish? Allah says, wrong. How often I have punished, but you don't notice? Have you not noticed that I've taken away from you the joy of talking to me? The sweetness of praying to me. waking up in the middle of the night, the joy of pleasing God. Once the desire to please Allah is gone, then religiosity is an empty shell. Soulless verbal gymnastics and empty labels. It's like a body without a soul. What I'm getting at is that the obedience to Allah, has to stem from this desire to please God. It has to be weighty, has to be heavy on the heart to some degree. And that's something that you appreciate about the companions, as we famously know. The desire to rushing to obey God, not just obeying, rushing to obey. You guys know the famous story when alcohol became haram. Anas says, radiyallahu anh, I was serving alcohol in Abu Talha's house. The announcer went through the streets of Medina that innal khamra qad hurrimat. Abu Talha says, he commands Anas radiyallahu anh, throw the jars out, throw the jugs out. Some companions have cups in their hand, they throw the cups away. And some went as far as to induce vomit to get alcohol out of their system. They weren't asked to go that far, but see that desire to please God. Aisha radiyallahu anha says, Yarhamullahu nisa al-muhajirat. May Allah bless the ladies, the muhajirat ladies, some of the earliest converts to Islam. Why? She says, when Allah revealed the verse, وَلْيَضْرِبْنَا بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ, and let your headscarf fall on your juyub. Now what's juyub? It's the neck opening. The hijab in the Quran that's laid out for you covers the head, and then it covers the front, especially the opening. She says, when this ayah came down, the muhajirat, they basically, some of them tore their shawls and they turned it into an instant hijab to cover themselves. Some tore their aprons, turned it into a hijab, immediate compliance. Have you seen our approach to obedience? You tell somebody, brother, lower your gaze. And he'll be like, but one look is halal, let me enjoy. Remember, I've shared this on my khutbah, during the khutbahs before. Someone reached out to me, brother Ameer, I'd like to go to hookah bars. Is that a problem? I'm like, it's super problematic. Now, I didn't want to say makrooh and haram, because they might, find a little loophole there, right? I was like, it's super problematic. I think you should stay away. They're like, yeah, but is it 100% haram? Is it 100% haram? Now, obviously, I can't say yes. But there you go. So anyway, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we don't turn this knowledge into another subject of calculus and math and whatever, that we maintain that gravity. All right, inshallah, with this, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursalin. Minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli, Allahumma zidna ilman wa amalan ya rabbal alameen. Folks, we're moving on to mustahab. Sister Nadia, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Okay, you guys, definition of mustahab is, it is any action that the lawgiver, by the way, when I say lawgiver, I am referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course, secondarily to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is any action that the lawgiver asks for as a recommendation, not an obligation. It is any action that the lawgiver asks for as a recommendation, not an obligation. Now, there's not a lot of room there, unfortunately, so just use whatever space of it is available. You guys, the $1 million question always with recommendations or mustahab is, how do we know? How do you know if God is requiring something or recommending something? The answer is the following. There are usually subtle and overt indicators that give it away. There are subtle and overt indicators that tell you that it's encouraged but not obliged. I want you guys to train your ears to pick up on those clues, if you will. So, I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to test you guys as a class to quickly figure this out. Ladies, we're going to start with you. Ready? I'm going to translate something for you. You tell me, where's the indicator that says that something is mustahab as opposed to an obligation? Ready? Okay, let's begin. Team Khadija, we're starting with you. Case number 1. Allah says in the Quran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, idha tadayantum bidaynin ila ajalin musamman. The longest ayah in the Quran, faktubu. There's a command. Allah says, O you who believe, when you're engaging in a loans transaction, write it down. And then Allah goes ahead and describes the entire process of witnesses and everything else is required. And then He says, فَإِنْ أَمِنَ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا فَلْيُؤَدِّ الَّذِي اؤْتُمِنَ أَمَانَتَهُ. But if you trust each other, then just go ahead and fulfill your trust. Okay, writing down the loans transaction, obligation or recommendation? Recommendation. What gave it away? Wait, which states? Oh, okay, but that could, that maybe it's subjectivity of the translator. But there's something even more obvious that gives it away, and that is? Yes, Ravia, go ahead. If you trust each other, then simply go ahead and fulfill your trust. Meaning, writing at this point is simply a recommendation. Got it? So you got to look for textual clues where the obligation is being relaxed. We're going to give the point to Yasmin and Nadia half-half, inshallah. Is Sister Hiba there? Okay, perfect. Bismillah. Case number 2. This is for team Fatima. The Prophet ﷺ says, famous hadith, "Man tawadda'a yawm al-jumu'ah fabiha wa ni'mat." Sorry. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever does wudu on the day of Jumu'ah, that will suffice, and that's good. And whoever does ghusl, then doing ghusl is better. Now, question for you guys, is doing ghusl on the day of Jumu'ah an obligation or a recommendation? The answer, of course, is recommendation. What gave it away? What gave it away? Shaza, go ahead. Yeah, it's an encouraging tone almost, isn't it? It's almost a recommending, suggestive tone, if you will. Did you want to add something about it?
I was just going to say it sounds like it's more of a choice.
Yeah, it gives a choice. That's another little indicator. Okay, Malik will, even though it wasn't your turn, but inshallah we'll give it to you to honor it. I know you got to get going soon. Okay, excellent. The fact that it gives you an option, that's a subtle indicator that it's a recommendation. Here's another one. The Prophet ﷺ said, Team Ali, this is for you. Any Muslim who prays 12 rak'ahs voluntarily outside of Faridah, Allah will build them a house in Jannah. The praying of 12 rak'ahs is clearly a recommendation. What gave it away? 5, 4, 3, 2. Zishan bhai, go ahead. What do you mean by comparing it? Differentiating, very good. He clearly separated between the fard and the, and he also used another word, which was voluntarily. Tatawwur is generally a word that is used for something that is voluntary or recommendation. So that's another. And maybe the last example I'll give, you guys at least write down 1 or 2 examples so it jogs your memory, inshallah, when you're studying for your test and quiz. The last example, and this is for you, Team Uthman. Oh, this is my favorite. The Prophet ﷺ says, Muttafaq alayh, hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. وَلَوْلَا أَنْ أَشُقَّ عَلَىٰ أُمَّتِي. Had it not been difficult for my ummah, I would command them to use miswak with every prayer. Okay. Using miswak for every prayer, therefore, gets the status of mustahab. What gave it away? Mukhtar, go ahead.
If it was not going to be hard for everyone.
You got to articulate it a little bit better. What gave it away? Yes, Adam, I would command. Had it not been hard, he would have commanded. Therefore, the reverse is, he didn't command, and therefore it is not an obligation. By the way, this hadith is an evidence for a rule of usul al-fiqh that I've been teaching you. What's the rule of usul al-fiqh that I've been teaching you? Blurt it out. This hadith is an evidence for a rule of fiqh that I've been talking about a lot, and that is command triggers an obligation. How do we get the evidence of this from this hadith? Yes? Because the Prophet was like, had it not been hard, I would have commanded. And subtext says, it would have become binding upon you. But he doesn't. Therefore, it's not binding upon you, and therefore it is a recommendation. You guys see how this works a little bit? Because someone could say, oh, Brother Ameer, you just came up with a, some liberal, he's like, this little rule of usul fiqh you have, a command triggers an obligation. I don't buy that. Where's the proof for that? Here's the proof for that. The Prophet ﷺ. Also, another proof for this, we're going to cover this later. You guys know another proof that command triggers an obligation? Allah talks to shaitan. What does he say? مَا مَنَعَكَ أَن تَسْجُدَ إِذْ أَمَرْتُكَ. What kept you from doing sajda when I commanded you? Meaning command is binding. You got to do it. So these are some evidences that we use to say that a command triggers an obligation. Inshallah. Okay, with this in mind, let's continue. You guys, there are 2 types of recommendations that you want to know about. The first is what I call a strong recommendation. What we call an emphasized recommendation. I think most of you have heard the term. You guys know the term in Arabic? Actually, let's just ask a particular. Team Umar, what's the term for a strong recommendation? It is? In Arabic, I mean. Sunnah muakkada, very good. Very, very good. What's a sunnah muakkada? These are things the Prophet ﷺ did, and he rarely let them go. things the Prophet had muwazaba, consistently he did throughout his life. Maybe he left them once or twice, but it was his standard habit. What are some examples of sunnah al-mu'akkada? Okay, so half a point for Aziz Bhai, and then Hamza, go ahead. 2 rakahs before Fajr are sunnah mu'akkada, very good. Praying in the congregation itself is sunnah mu'akkada. Washing your nose and mouth during wudu is a sunnah mu'akkada. The sequence of your wudu is sunnah mu'akkada. And so on and so forth. On the other hand, you also have now the second category, what we call light recommendations. When we use the word mustahab, we by default refer to light recommendations, by the way. What would be a good example of light recommendation? Team Abu Bakr, help me out quickly. What is an example of a light recommendation? Meaning like, Nafil prayers, okay, what else? Fasting on? Well, that's called sunnah for a reason. Sunnah generally means it was a strongly recommended one. But fasting on? Monday and Thursday, very good. That's a light recommendation. For us, tahajjud is a light recommendation. Although the Prophet did it a lot, but it was, some scholars say it was specific for him. And therefore, it remains a light recommendation for us. Okay, with this in mind, inshallah, we move on. You guys,
How about witr?
oh, we're coming. Everybody loves witr. Oh, we're coming to witr. Don't you worry, folks. We're coming. You're going to figure that one out for me. I'm not doing all the homework for y'all. Okay, outcome. Okay, when it comes to sunnah mu'akkada, doing mu'akkada gets you rewarded. And abandoning it once in a while is okay. Consistently abandoning it is a problem. Got it? Sunnah mu'akkada results in being rewarded by Allah. But if you abandon it once in a while, that's okay. Consistently abandoning it is a serious problem. It can become a sin. Regular mustahab gets you rewarded. Not doing it doesn't get you in trouble. Yes?
So that does include the miswak
Miswak is not sunnah mu'akkada, as far as I know. Doing regular mustahab gets you rewarded. Not doing it does not get you in trouble. Everybody clear on this? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what now we're about to do, inshallah, I want you to pull up your telegrams for me, please. And Sister Noor, on Telegram, I sent a PowerPoint. If you can pull that up, inshallah. You guys, what I need you to do is the following. Sisters, you guys can go into your own teams, and I want you to look at the screenshots that I sent. The screenshot related to witr, ladies, that's yours. Both teams of the sisters, they will try to figure out. One thing, I'll give the instructions in a second, but the first screenshot of the witr is yours. Brothers, you're going to tackle the question of silence during recitation. Do you see that screenshot? Okay, pull it up. You're discussing within your teams. The question is provided for you. I want you guys to act like a jurist. I want you to go through the evidence that's provided, and I want you to give me your best estimate or your best answer. Is witr, based on the evidence in front of you, fard, wajib, mustahab, sunnah mu'akkada? Ladies, go ahead and get started on that task. You can turn to your teams and have a lively discussion. Brothers, you're going to figure out, is being silent while Quran is being recited, is that something that is a wajib, fard, mustahab? What is it? Okay, go ahead, do your thing, folks. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. You guys, I'm not going to go team by team, but I'm going to just pick on the ladies' side overall. Now, we're going to go evidence by evidence, and you guys are going to tell me what your thought process is when you look at that evidence by itself, and then we can start accumulating the evidence. You guys, you started out by reading the first piece of evidence where the Prophet ﷺ said, narrated by a particular companion, I forgot to give you the name, let's just assume a particular companion of the Prophet, the witr is a right of Allah upon every Muslim. Does that evidence alone gives you what thought process? Wajib, very good. Can we say fard? You can't say fard yet, why? Is it coming from the Quran? No. It's a solitary hadith. We don't know yet if it's widely transmitted. So most you can say it's wajib, because again, the right upon Allah and that language, that verbiage indicates a wajib. Good? So far so good? All right, you move on to the second evidence, because you got to look at the entire picture. The Prophet ﷺ said, narrated by Ibn Jabir radiallahu anhu, O people of Quran, do your witr, for Allah is witr and He loves the witr prayer. Have you updated your conclusion yet? What's your conclusion now at this point, ladies? Still wajib, and is moving towards fard because it's becoming widely transmitted. You guys understand so far? Moving on to the third hadith, another companion of the Prophet, Ibn Umar. Ibn Umar says that the Prophet ﷺ said, make the last prayer of your night the witr prayer. Now this is pretty much fard, widely transmitted, commands after commands, commands after commands. This is serious business. Seems like witr is a fard so far. But something puts a little dent into your theory when you go to number 4. Here you have a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where a Bedouin, Talha ibn Ubaidillah is the one narrating this hadith. He says a Bedouin came to the Prophet ﷺ asking about the obligations of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ said 5 prayers during the day and night. The man asked, is there any other prayer obligation? The Prophet said, no. Okay, so ladies, let me ask you guys. How is the fourth conclusion that you have developed so far, does that need to be revised in light of this hadith? Umber, what do you say?
Well, I think because it depends on what the 5 prayers include. So what if it's part of the 5 prayers?
Well, we know every prayer only has one cluster of fard, yes?
Yeah.
Right? There's no prayer that has one cluster of fard and another cluster of fard. So when he says 5 prayers, all the fara'id are covered. If there was anything else, he should have spelled it out. So then what do we do now? How do we revise our conclusion? We're moving back towards wajib or potentially mustahab. Okay, so we're somewhere there, we're not entirely sure. The last piece of evidence gives us further clarity. This is a fantastic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Ibn Umar says, the Prophet ﷺ used to pray voluntary prayers on his riding animal in whatever direction, along with witr. But he wouldn't pray the prescribed prayers upon it. And that gives you a fairly clear idea that this is moving towards. Now you're between 2 options. It's one of the 2. What are the 2 options left? It's either sunnah muakkada or it's either mustahab. Which one is it? I think Abdullah ibn Umar says he used to do this, which shows a level of regularity, I would say. And therefore, this most likely, and plus you got to take all the commands into account. Majority, overwhelming amount of scholars, including the 3 schools of thoughts, including the 2 students of Abu Hanifa, they say witr is sunnah muakkada. Abu Hanifa is alone in saying that it's actually wajib. Why does he say wajib? Because of an extra piece of evidence that I gave you guys, which was, it's not here, where the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever misses their witr prayer, they need to make it up. Abu Hanifa is like, there's so many commands. On top of that, you got to make it up, which is not the case for anything else. He's like, I'm not comfortable making it somewhat optional. Abu Hanifa stands with the opinion it's actually wajib. Everybody else says it's sunnah muakkada, but it's somewhere in the middle. Got it, everyone? Good? See how we evaluate evidences? Yes?
Question. So if you have many hadith that point towards wajib or farad, but you have a few hadith or maybe even one that says that leads someone to say it is mustahab. What?
Like when you have contradictory data, you're saying?
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation? It's a case by case situation. There are what we call tiebreaker rules in fiqh, So you look at, for instance, the authenticity of the transmission. Some scholars look at the fact, are there companions who are narrating, are they all fuqaha themselves? So there are many tie-breaking rules that you can use to, inshallah, resolve that conflict. Yes?
What do you exactly define as widely transmitted? Is it 2? Is it 3? Like, what do you define as widely transmitted?
Widely transmitted, very good. That's a good question. We're going to get to that, inshallah, in the next chapter. So hold off that question until then. Yes?
This is kind of like a theoretical discussion, but like let's say number 4 happened first, so I wonder if there's like a temporal context.
Oh!
And then number 3 happened before it passed away. Does that change?
The answer to that is temporal. Okay, so I don't know if this is an advanced question of fiqh, but since he asked it, we're going to have to go into it. In Islam, there's a concept of naskh, where a later command can abrogate the previous command. Are you guys aware of that concept? Drinking was allowed. So Allah says in the Quran, do not show up to prayer drunk. Well, if it's already haram, He wouldn't issue that command. So we know that command came early, in the earlier stages. Later, Allah issued a command. He said, fashtanibu. It abrogated everything else before it. His is a profound question. What if one of the hadith came later, like this one right here, and abrogated the previous practice? The answer to that is, it's a what if. Unless there's clear-cut evidence to establish sequence, we got to take it all at once. And here it's hard to see any sequence established at all. So, al-bayyinatu ala al-mudda'i, as they say, the proof is upon the one making the claim. So if you're going to make the claim of a temporal sequence or naskh or whatever, you got to make the proof. It's hard to say any proof here. Okay, we move on to a slightly difficult case, folks. And Sister Noor, if you can do me a favor and put up the next picture. Brothers, are you ready for this? Okay. Silence during, you can, if it's easier to see, it's on your telegram. If it's harder to see on this board, then feel free to use your phone. Silence during Quranic recitation. That's a more difficult case. You guys, Allah says in the Quran, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. When Quran is recited, listen attentively to it and be quiet. Notice Allah uses a passive form, قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ. Because it's in the passive, the one doing it is not mentioned. So it could be a tape, it could be an actual person. If Quran is being recited, what does Allah say? You need to listen, 2 commands, and you need to be quiet. Brothers, just by looking at this piece of evidence, being quiet while Quran is being recited should be a wajib? Fard. Why fard? Because Quran is saying Quran is widely transmitted. Okay, all right. Let's move on to the second piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence here is Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says, they used to be able to talk during prayer for a need until this ayah came down. Let's look at this evidence along with the third one right there, where Abdullah ibn Mas'ud says, people used to be able to talk during prayer, ask for their needs, until the following ayah came down. Now, do you upgrade, revise your conclusion? Okay, raise your hands. Tell me, what's your what conclusion? And of course, there's the fatwa of Ibn Abbas on the bottom. Ibn Abbas comments on this verse. He says, meaning during the prescribed prayers. I want to hear, what conclusions did you guys reach? So, answer the following question. Is being silent during Quranic recitation outside of prayer, is it a must or not? Okay, so let's hear from some people. Abdul Jawad, go. You say mustahab. Elaborate. Fair enough. Okay, so you're going with the opinion it's mustahab outside of prayer, wajib inside the prayer, or fard inside the prayer. Hold that thought. Did anybody have a different conclusion? Anybody took the more stricter opinion? No one? You want me to play devil's advocate? Okay, let's play devil's advocate, shall we? Okay. This is the fatwa of Ibn Abbas. Quran, if Quran wanted you to be quiet just in prayer, Allah would have said, وَإِذَا قُرِيَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ فِي صَلَاتِكُمْ. Does it say fi salatikum? Quran is general in His wording. Clearly Allah is saying Quran is recited, you need to be quiet. Quran is not specifying whether it's in prayer or outside of prayer. How are we going to take one solitary fatwa and restrict the generality of the Quran just for your barbershop convenience? I don't know. How do we get around this, folks? Go ahead.
If you look at the term mercy, but it's not like.
So that's not a big deal to you? Is that what it is? Right? That's what you're getting at, right? It's not that big of a deal. So that's just.
Like if there's something like really pressing and you have to talk. Like
But we're not talking about exceptional circumstances. We're talking about what's a normative default rule. The default rule, if a brother started reciting Quran or there's a Quran playing here or whatever, do you need to be quiet? You're saying you're in the masjid, you're not praying, but there's someone or there's a jama'ah going on and Quran is being recited. Do we need to be quiet? Is it binding upon us or not? Brother Abid, what do you say? So what are you saying? It is outside of prayer, it is wajib. Is that what you're saying? So you're on the conservative, you're on the stricter camp. Okay, all right, good. I ain't got beef with you, brother. I got beef with these liberals. Let me hear from these. Yes, go ahead. Yes, but you got to prove that. So if you're saying I shouldn't take the literal meaning, it's because you got to provide, like when we say with mustahab, so you have some overt indicator for me that says that I don't have to take this literally? Yeah, please, sorry. But is the Prophet talking here?
Well, they learned from the Prophet.
But is the Prophet talking here, restricting the meaning of the Quran? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no, brother? Is the Prophet telling you, Allah meant fi salatim? Does he say that? What if this is a companion's ijtihad, his legal conclusion? How will this override the general meaning of the Quran, the aam of the Quran? You know, that's not
overriding the general meaning.
Well, look, the general meaning is you need to be quiet all the time, yes? Now you're saying this open-endedness is actually restricted to inside the prayer. That's the argument you're making. I don't know if you realize it or not. What you guys are saying is that Allah says, even though Allah says open-endedly, you need to be quiet. What you're saying is, in parentheses, God is saying, be quiet inside the prayer. I'm saying, where's that inside the prayer is coming from? You're saying it's coming from here. I'm saying the Prophet's not talking.
But they're citing stories of when, at the time
They're
of
giving you context, which is nice. But here's the problem with context, Mr. Dia. There are many verses in the Quran which come in a particular context. Are we going to restrict those rulings just to those contexts? Allow me to give you an example. Humor me, please. There's a famous ayah of the Quran that I referenced earlier. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Allah commands you to give the trusts back to their rightful owners. Do you know when this ayah came down? Hadith comes in Bukhari, if I'm not mistaken, that the Prophet ﷺ conquered Makkah. He's now entering the building of the Kaaba itself. The key belongs to Talha ibn Uthman. The Prophet ﷺ summoned him, took the key from him, entered the Kaaba, and started cleaning it up. While he's inside Kaaba, this verse comes down, you need to give the trust back to their rightful owners. The Prophet ﷺ comes out, gives the key back to Talha ibn Uthman, and he said, this will belong to you till the day of judgment. Until today, that tribe has the key. Are we going to restrict the meaning of that verse to just Kaaba-related business? Or are we going to look at the generality of the verse, which says you need to return the trust back to their rightful owners? We're going to keep it open-ended unless something restricts it. So, how are we going to take a particular backdrop story and shackle the verse of the Quran to that? You know, it's a tough sell at the very least. Yes?
It's very similar to what...
Sorry, Mustafa, and then come.
I was going to say, the way I think about it, you have two pretty much override like Ibn Abbas' tafsir.
So are we going to take every tafsir of Ibn Abbas to be the final word on the Quran? What if he disagrees with Ibn Mas'ud? Well, I'm saying the companions disagree in their tafsirs, right? Well, that's a well-known fact. Ibn Abbas's word can't always be the final word on the understanding of the Quran, is what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, this could be his ijtihad, if you will, his opinion or fatwa, you know, which we can take, and of course we take it seriously, but is it binding on us to restrict the entire meaning of the Quran? That's giving too much authority to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, with all due respect to him. Yes? Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so allow me to, yes, actually I listened to a couple of you guys just so we can keep the class going. So here's what some of the scholars have to say after they analyze this stuff. They say when a companion speaks about matters like these, kind of like what Diya was talking about and others, when a companion talks about matters of sababun nuzul, even though they're not directly referencing the Prophet, it occurred in the time of the Prophet. And therefore, it carries weight, and particularly a backdrop story has some ability to restrict the meaning of the Quran, especially when you have multiple narrations. So the majority of the schools of thought, they say, listening to Quran and being silent is wajib or fard inside the prayer. But they make the argument Abdul Jawad was making, I know I was a little trolling you a little bit, but majority of them make the argument it would create so much haraj if we were to take it open-endedly. And Allah says in the Quran, we did not put undue difficulty in this religion. So imagine you're at Al-Bazaar restaurant and he decided to play Surah Al-Waqi'ah for extra barakah. Now everybody else has to be quiet. The entire, mashallah, Arab family of 26, they're all sitting there quietly eating, as if they're under some house arrest. It would be too much. And also in a marketplace, if one shop owner decided to put the Quran on, now all the customers within a, 30 feet radius, they all have to be quiet. It would become too much of a difficulty. So they say in light of this, plus other spirits of Sharia, we're going to say that outside of prayer, it's going to be mustahab. Okay? However, one thing you guys need to be aware, the Hanafi scholars are in two camps on this. Some Hanafi scholars, they say we are not going to override the generality of the Quran with this. Quran is widely transmitted, open-ended, and this right here in our eyes is not strong enough to restrict that open-endedness. Some group of Hanafis, they say it's actually wajib inside or outside. Another group of Hanafis, they came up with a middle position, which I somewhat inclined towards. They said we get the hardship that's going to create. So here's the middle position they struck, which is genius in my opinion. They say inside the prayer, it's wajib, like everybody else says. Outside the prayer is fardul kifaya. So as long as few people are listening to it, everybody else is off the hook. This way we're respecting the command of the Quran, but at the same time we're kind of getting people off the hook as well. Does that make sense? So that shop owner playing Surah Al-Waqi'ah, he better listen. Everybody else, inshallah, then will be kind of off the hook. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, very good. Okay. Yes.
So when you say
No, when you're inside the prayer and the imam is reciting. Because وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ, when the Quran is being recited, and the person who does that in prayer is your imam. So then you have to be, and so this is very important. If you're praying tarawih behind the imam, what do a lot of the huffaz do? If you zoom in onto their mouths, what is happening? They're reviewing their stuff. They're like, no, Allah says you need to listen. This is not the time to review the next 4 rakahs you're about to lead. We understand you're under pressure, but you gotta listen, brother. Okay, we good so far? All right, you guys, we have about 20 minutes, so inshallah we're gonna rush a little bit. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Go ahead. Makrooh, we're gonna skip. We're gonna come back to it. We're gonna go straight to haram. Haram. Here we go. I need you guys to write fast, real quick. It is any action that lawgiver asks you to avoid. It is any action that the lawgiver asks you to avoid on mandatory terms. How is this communicated to you? Okay, so let me ask this question to Team Abu Bakr. Team Abu Bakr, take a wild guess. What do you think is the most common way Allah communicates to you that something is haram? I'll give you a hint. It's a polar opposite of the first one when we were discussing wajib and fard. So you should be able to figure this out. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But is this how most commonly Allah communicates when something is fard? They tells you, this is fard. This is wajib. No. There's a more common form He uses. So what's the inverse of that here? 4, 3, Abid, go ahead.
To use the language of nahi.
To use that, so what would that sound like? So He'll use the command form in the negative. Got it? Okay, go ahead and write that down. So Allah says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Don't come near zina. وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. Don't backbite each other. وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. Don't spy on each other. Can I share a touchy one? وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ إِمْلَاقٍ. Don't kill your children out of fear of poverty and financial concerns. 30% of abortions are done because of financial concerns. I'll let you guys think about that. Okay, that leads me to the second way God communicates that something is haram. Allah will tell you to stay away from something. So there's no la being used, don't do this or don't do that. God is going to use the word fajtanibu, maintain distance from this. So what does He say when it comes to khamr? Fajtanibu. So again, the second category is stay away from something. Allah says, فَاجْتَنِبُوا قَوْلَ الزُّورِ. Stay away from false testimony. Third way that you should be able to easily pick up when something is haram is Allah will negate the word halal. He will say, لَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ. It is not permissible for you. It's simply not halal for you. أَن تَأْخُذُوا مِمَّا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ شَيْئًا. That you take back the mahr that you have given to your wives. لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. That was my last khutbah. It's simply not permissible for you to treat women as if they are something that you can just inherit. Because there was a jahili custom back in the days that they would, when the lady's husband would die, now the in-laws had the right to decide who she marries next. Whether she stays unmarried, what happens to her children, what happens to her mahr, khalas, like she's a property. So Quran came down. Another way, obviously the most obvious way Allah tells you something is haram is He'll actually spell it out for you. He'll say, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ حَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. He'll use the word haram. Or for pork, what does Allah say? حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ وَالدَّمُ وَلَحْمُ الْخِنْزِيرِ. So word haram is used. How many did we get so far? 4? The last one, Allah will use the word sin or dhulm or some sort of a threat or punishment. If you see one of those 4 things, dhulm, sin, punishment, or threat of punishment, you know something is messed up. So for riba, what does Allah say? فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Get ready to wage war with God and His Messenger. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَا يَدْخُلُ الْجَنَّةَ قَتَّاتٌ. The one who breaks the ties of kinship is not entering Jannah, period. That's a threat, and that makes it haram. Got it? Now haram is pretty straightforward, except the additional notes part. You guys, I think most of us are aware. Let's move on, inshallah. Yeah, hopefully you guys got that. Okay, go ahead. 2 simple types. Something is either haram in and of itself, haramul li nafsihi, and those are most of the haram things that you're aware of: drinking, zina, incest, murder, so on and so forth. But there are things that are halal in and of themselves, but they become haram because of an external factor. What we call haram li ghayri. Class, raise your hands. Tell me some haram li ghayri, please. Give me an example. Praying by the graves. That is not something. So prayer is obviously halal, it's wajib, but you don't do that by graveyards. Excellent, have a point. Bam, another one.
It's similar to the last one, praying at certain times of the day because it's similar to the sun worshippers.
Praying during forbidden times of prayer. Excellent, another half a point. Ladies, do we have any other examples of something that is halal but becomes haram because of an external factor? Yes. Okay, fair enough. Okay, praying without taharah. Okay, so that's fine. We can go ahead and give that. Anything outside of the prayer scope? Yes. Fasting on the day of Eid. I love that. That's very good. Fasting is permissible, just not on the day of Eid. Very good. Any other examples, Esra? Perfume for women. And tell us more about that. Yes. Okay, so from what I understand of that situation there is that if perfume is something that leaves behind trail, like you can tell when someone was in that room, that's when it starts to become fitna. So in other words, it's okay to use good scent, but if it's attracting some fitna, then in that situation it becomes problematic. Okay, let's take two more hands and then we're gonna move forward. Yes. Hunting during Hajj, very nice. Ihram. Haram. Okay, very good. Hunting inside the haram or hunting in ihram, these are both things that we do not do. Fantastic example. Let me hear from Sister Shaza real quick.
Relations with your spouse while fasting.
Okay, very cool. Relationship with your spouse while fasting, very nice. Well done. And the last one?
Zakah, Salah, any type of worship that you do in front of others that like you do it to please others.
With the wrong intention? Okay, wow, I think we can go ahead and, with intention you can apply to anything, but fair enough. We'll give you 0.25 on that one, huh? But you guys, one thing nobody mentioned is buying and selling something with haram money. That's a huge one. Haram money is kind of like, has tentacles, haram tentacles. Whatever it touches, it taints it. Buying and selling is okay, but if you're using haram money, it just taints it. Also, buying and selling haram commodities, those things are problematic. Okay, if everybody understood this, let's move on. Bismillah. Outcome is very simple. The person who engages in haram is sinful in the eyes of Allah, with potential consequences in this world, including capital punishment, like in the case of murder, and the hereafter if there's no repentance. The person is held liable and sinful in the eyes of Allah, with potential consequences in this world, including capital punishment, and the hereafter. Okay, Bismillah, let's continue.
Additional note.
You guys, now we're gonna flip the whole haram and we're gonna flip the whole fard and wajib script. We're gonna flip it right here. So please go ahead and write this down. For the majority of scholars, haram is all there is, just like wajib is all there is. It's potato. Wajib, fard, nafsu shay. Similarly, haram is all there is to the picture. Hanafis, we say not so fast. There's nuance. We love nuance. Okay, here we go. We say haram is equivalent to fard. Meaning haram is something that is established through definitive evidence, folks. Qat'i evidence. And what's qat'i evidence? Let me hear from you guys. What's qat'i evidence again? Number one is Quran. Why is Quran qat'i? It's widely transmitted and it's God talking at the end of the day. It's verbatim. Okay, very good. And what's also another qat'i form of evidence? Widely transmitted hadith. What's a quick way to know a widely transmitted hadith? Well, it's using another term that needs to be defined. But you would say, what's the quickest way to know something is widely transmitted when it's coming from multiple companions? You guys, I think I gave this example last time, but just to wrap your head around this idea of something that's being widely transmitted, if I made an announcement today, class, there is no class next week, and one person here is absent, and they are told by their friend, hey, Ustadh Ameer said there's no class next week. They're like, oh, you sure you heard him right? I don't know. What if there's room for error? Maybe if you misheard something, maybe it was just, your mind is giving a convenient spin to this. What are they going to do? They're going to ask another multiple students in the class. If 5 students all communicate there's no class next week, what just happened? It became definitive evidence. Because how did 6 people lie on the same details? How did 6 independent minds collude to make up a lie? It's too much to swallow. You have to be a conspiracy theorist to believe that. Inshallah, we'll be talking about conspiracy theories at some point, inshallah. Okay, so for Hanafis, haram and fard are the same thing. They both come from qat'i evidence. And folks, if you need any examples, just look at anything that Quran makes prohibited: zina, alcohol, homosexuality. And by the way, what did we say about anything that comes through qat'i evidence, class? What's the concept? What's the kicker? When something is made fard or haram through qat'i evidence? Mustafa, go ahead. If you say that's not a thing, you're potentially outside of the fold of Islam. So that's why this debate is sensitive. Now, what if Allah prohibits something, or Quran and Sunnah prohibit something, but it's not coming from qat'i channels, it's coming from dhanni channels? There's a singular transmission of a hadith that makes it prohibited. What do we call that, Hanafis? We call it, now you can say the words. Sister Mahavish said it at the beginning of the class, that was makrooh tahrimi. Makrooh tahrimi. Makrooh tahrimi, but guys, don't be fooled by the word makrooh in front of it. Makrooh tahrimi is haram, it's just coming from a solitary transmission. What are some examples of this? Wearing silk for men, makrooh tahrimi. Wearing gold for men. And you guys say men have it easy. Wearing gold for men. Undercutting someone with a signed business deal. I don't know if you guys know this. If someone has a signed business deal with another, now you go to a seller and say, actually, I got a better deal for you, brother. That's not something we do. وَلَا يَبِيعُ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَيْعِ بَعْضٍ. Praying in forbidden times, especially when the sun is rising and sun is setting. These are all makrooh tahrimi. Eyebrows, for those who hold a conservative opinion, that is also something that comes from that root. Okay, so with this in mind, alhamdulillah, we were able to cover that fairly quickly. All right, let's move on. Now we can go to makrooh and understand it a little bit easier. Go ahead. So go ahead and go back to the page. It is any action that you're asked to avoid, not on mandatory terms. It's any action that you're asked to avoid, not on mandatory terms, and just keep an eye out for clues, subtle and overt, as we did with mustahab. There's a famous hadith, the Prophet said, كَرِهَ لَكُمْ ثَلَاثًا. 3 things are made makruh for you. So he's like giving it to you. كَثْرَةُ السُّؤَال. Excessive questioning. وَقِيلَ وَقَالْ. Useless conversations. وَإِضَاعَةُ الْمَالِ. And blowing away your money. You know, killing cash, as they say. Okay, folks, you guys should be able to answer this. For Hanafis, there are 2 types of makruh. What's going to be the first type of makruh? What we call the regular makruh. The first type of makruh is a regular type of makruh. Like raising your voice in the masjid, wasting water, feet towards the qibla, socializing after Isha. By the way, the Prophet used to tell people not to do this. Socializing uselessly after Isha. He wanted people to go to sleep and have a proper schedule. That's makruh, lightly makruh. Hanafis would say there's regular makruh and then there is, come on class, there is makruh tahrimi, which is essentially haram through solitary transmission. And what is a strong mustahab called? Let's see if you guys still remember. Strong mustahab is called sunnah mu'akkada. You got it? Okay, so let's try this again. I need you guys to say it because you remember something that you said with your own mouth. Strong recommendation is called sunnah mu'akkada. Strong makruh is called makruh tahrimi. An obligation through a solitary transmission is called, let me say that slowly. An obligation through a solitary transmission is called wajib. Very good. A prohibition through a widely transmitted channel is called haram. An obligation through widely transmitted channels are called fard. You guys got it? You'll have to get used to it. Obviously, for some of you, it's new terminology a little bit. So let that seep in, inshallah. You guys, when it comes to the outcome of makrooh, things that are regular makrooh, what we call makrooh tanzihi, if you're looking for the fancy word for it, the one who avoids it through a struggle, you get rewarded by Allah. Understand, not every makrooh is a temptation for everyone. Not every haram is a temptation for everyone. Can I ask you guys are not drinking right now. You're avoiding haram. Do you think you're getting rewarded for it? You know, there's 100 harams I'm not doing right now. Am I getting rewarded for all of them? No, because there's no struggle. You get rewarded when struggle kicks in. So it's that convert walking through the aisles of Pick and Save and he's getting, withdrawals as he's passing by the champagne bottle. He's getting rewarded. Not you and I when there's no temptation. Does that make sense? So if there's a struggle and you avoid it, you get rewarded. But if you engage in a regular makrooh, inshallah, you're not sinful. But it can become a stepping stone, so just be careful. If you engage in a regular makrooh, it's not sinful, but it can become a stepping stone. You might get desensitized, so be careful. And of course, makrooh tahrimi is essentially haram, so treat it as such. Yes?
So does the reward apply to things that are halal and haram? So if like something is harder for someone like fasting, you get extra reward for it?
You normally say reward is according to the struggle that you go through it. So imagine like someone's fasting for 19 hours. You hope that they get a greater reward than someone who's chilling with a 9-hour fast, So, yes?
I wanted to ask if it would be possible to make like an index of words like this. Like Arabic's not my first language and it's hard for me to even hear.
Are you volunteering yourself, inshallah, for that? Inshallah. Oh, wow. Typical guy. Offloading responsibility. I'm kidding. That's why the student body exists, inshallah, to create those types of visual aids. I recommend that one of you, inshallah, engage in that. Can I quickly talk about mubah and I'll take your questions? Go ahead and scroll to the last thing that we're going to cover today, inshallah, and then we are done, folks. You guys, the last label for today is mubah. Very simple. It is any action that is neither encouraged nor discouraged, neither rewarded nor punished. The lawgiver deems it neutral. It is any action that is neither encouraged nor discouraged, neither rewarded nor punished. Normally, Allah communicates this to you when He says, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا. There is no blame upon you if you do this. So at least get that style down, and I'll tell you another one. Normally in the Quran, Allah will say, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا. There's no blame upon you if you do this. فِي مَفْتَدَتْ بِهِ. When He's talking about khula'a, if you don't know what a khula'a is when a lady finances her own divorce by giving back the mahar. Allah says, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا. There's no blame upon you if you do this. Or Allah will say, أُحِلَّتْ لَكُمْ. Following things have been made halal for you. أُحِلَّتْ لَكُمُ الْأَنْعَامُ إِلَّا مَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ. Consuming sheep and goats, that breed of animals has been made permissible for you, except when you're in ihram. Now, one last fascinating thing, and then inshallah, we're done with our class today. You guys, something very interesting you need to get down to take your knowledge of Quran and Sunnah to a whole new level. Sometimes in the Quran, if you can go ahead and write this down, something really fascinating. Sometimes Allah will command something, but it actually gets the label of mubah. Not even a recommendation, just straight up mubah. Allah is actually commanding, and yet the label we give is not an obligation, which is what you would expect, not a recommendation, you give it a label of mubah. Normally that happens in the context where God closed the door on something, now He wants to open the door on something. I'll give you examples and it'll become clear. Normally it happens in the context where God closes the door on something, then He opens the door on something. Here's a great example. Ready? Allah says, beginning of Surah Al-Ma'idah, غَيْرَ مُحِلِّ الصَّيْدِ وَأَنْتُمْ حُرُمْ. You are not allowed to hunt. You're not allowed to hunt when you are in the state of ihram. Please go ahead and write this down. Allah says you are not allowed to hunt when you are in the state of ihram. But then later He says, وَإِذَا حَلَلْتُمْ فَاصْطَادُوا. But when you are outside of ihram, then hunt. Tell me, folks, do you have to hunt? Hunting there gets the label of mubah, as if Allah is saying, feel free to hunt. So even though it's a command, what label are we giving it? Mubah. Very good. Another great example, Allah says, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلًا. Give women their mahar. What label does that get, folks? Mahar is a fard. Okay, very good. But then Allah says, فَإِن طِبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ نَفْسًا. Mahar is theirs, you're not allowed to take it back. But if they, from the happiness of their own hearts, decide to give some back to you, Allah says, فَكُلُوهُ. Eat it. Consume it. Do you have to eat it? Can you give it in charity? Yeah. That command there is not for an obligation, it's actually for a. So you guys, I need you guys to do one last thing, inshallah, and then basically we are done for the day. Take a look at your telegram. And I'm going to ask you guys as a class, you do not need to discuss this, just analyze this for me, and then inshallah we are set. 3, 2, 1, bam. I sent you a picture. Now, if you understood the class today, inshallah, hopefully your understanding of reading Quran and Sunnah just changed a little bit. You guys, this ayah of Surah Al-Jumu'ah, I am counting a total of 5 commands here. We're going to go command by command and you're going to give me a label. You guys ready for this? Take a look at it. If you want to pull up your telegram, it's easier to read that way, do it. Bismillah. Ready? Let's begin. Believers, when the call to prayer is made on the day of Jumu'ah, rush towards the remembrance of Allah. Fard. What's the fard here? What do you mean by rush? Going to Jumu'ah upon a Muslim male is a fard. But the command is open-ended. It includes believers and believing men and believing women. But the Prophet ﷺ in a famous hadith exempts the women. And that's why we restrict the scope of the Quran. We'll talk about restricting the scope later. But for now, going to Jumu'ah is a fard. So the first command will get the label of fard. Okay, let's move on to the second command. And Allah says, rush towards the remembrance of Allah and leave off your trading, buying and selling. What label would that get, folks? How many of you, raise your hand, how many of you, what label are you guys saying? What do you mean first? Not buying and selling, while Jumu'ah Adhan has occurred, buying and selling would get the label of haram. Because Allah clearly prohibits this. This is a command in the negative form. Got it, everyone? Okay. Something very interesting now. I don't know if you guys can see this. Then Allah says that is better for you if you only knew. Then when the prayer has ended, disperse into the land and seek out God's bounty. Spreading into the land. What label would that get after Jumu'ah? How many of you say mustahab? Why mubah? Yes, go ahead.
Because like you just previously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave an order, and once that order has been finished, then you are allowed to.
Very good. God closed the door on something, now He's opening the door, and spreading out into the land becomes mubah. And then Allah says, and seek out God's bounty. Go back to work. Seek the risk God has written for you. What label would we give to that? Either mubah or mustahab. You pick. Going to work is something the Prophet ﷺ did recommend. Earning money for your family. So maybe we can give it a label of recommendation right there. But if you said mubah, God is just opening the door, you would be fine. Notice you're looking at commands, but you're not giving it the label of obligation. You have to have a little nuance there. That's what I'm trying to train your mind in. And the last but not least, and then Allah says, and remember God often, وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا, so that you may prosper. What label do we give that to? Remembering Allah. Do you have to remember Allah all the time? No, you don't. So this has to be mustahab. Kathir kind of gives it away. And also dhikr of Allah is well known through the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not possible to do it all the time. And therefore it would become something that is a recommendation. That's how you analyze Quran. That's how you apply these labels. That's how you introduce a little bit of nuance. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, that you elevate your own understanding and absorb all this. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Majid wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikril hakim. If you have any questions, you can come and bug me, inshallah, privately.